Reviewing Pokemon Snakewood in this level of detail might have been a mistake. You saw the timestamp. Yes, somehow there is this much to say about a mostly forgotten fan game from 2010 without padding out with stuff like 10-minute rants about someone losing their car keys or whatever. It is going to be barely structured rambling, and if you don't like it, weep uncontrollably. I could have just restructured the whole thing from scratch, but I'm in too deep now to go back, and so are you, now that I've shown you whatever this thing is, and whatever this thing is, and whatever this thing is, and so the question of the day is, how do any of these guys fit into the same game, let alone one that's allegedly about zombies? I have no idea how this even happened, but the popular perception of, like, the bare basics of what this game is about is just not true. Everyone under the sun describes Pokemon Snakewood as Pokemon but with zombies. The first line of his god-awful TV tropes page calls it Pokemon but with zombies, and the gameplay for the first 5% of it or so seems to be about Pokemon but with zombies. That idea could have potential, if it's actually what the game was, which it isn't. It's like calling Super Mario Bros. Donkey Kong with Goombas. Like, that is a statement that's true, but there's no truth to it. Pokemon Snakewood can best be described as a haphazard mishmash of whatever the author, Cutlerine, felt like putting in the game at the time, and zombies happen to be first. It does attempt to maintain that edgy flavoring throughout, at least sometimes, and zombies are the one thing the game sort of remembers exists for the whole thing, but just as often it takes a detour to something like this. It's kind of a platonic ideal of early janky ROM hack with an inconsistent direction and an incoherent plot. Like, okay, you need to see its list of features on Poke Community. It includes the lines 5 issue or Unova, depending on how much you care, Pokemon, 6 Denju, an enormous number of references to books, films, manga, other hacks, and other such things, and an unusual and slightly wandering storyline. Which is one hell of an understatement. Now, Cutlerine was also a teenager at the time of writing this, and that will make itself very apparent very quickly. I used to be one too, and let me tell you, my writing was similarly god-awful. If you ever dicked around in a ROM hacking tool as a kid, this is essentially a full game version of that, which I do have to give a lot of props for. The hardest part about making anything is completing it, and it's genuinely impressive that they did. That does not mean I will not be tearing this game apart atom by atom when necessary, because holy shit, there are layers here. This was my second playthrough of this, and it was just as incoherent as the first. The game got relatively popular back when it released, and it seemed to be just because it was one of the first beatable fan games since, well, a majority of the stuff in it is just taken or edited from Pokemon Ruby. ROM hacks in the early days tend to have a much lower standard of quality, to the point where Cutlerine's main inspiration was apparently Pokemon Quartz, a ROM hack that only lives on to the few that remember its terrible translation at a Vinesauce Joel video from 8 years ago.
That's not even like a half a Pokemon. It's not even like a quarter Digimon. That's not even like a 16th of a Monster Rancher. It's... Ooh.
These media-based ARG tier standards, along with the simple alleged hook, are likely responsible for its initial popularity. It was the early 2010s, and if you heard that some genius made a game that's a ROM hack of Pokemon but with zombies, you would eat that up, because zombies were in. The general consensus about the game's quality nowadays, though, well, it's soured a bit. Not for everyone. Some people still think it's good, somehow, but its reputation has seen better days. Let me make my opinion very clear. This game is not good, but it manages to be everything else at the same time. I don't know how to explain this, but it manages to be a weird mix of straight bad, so bad it's good, so bad it's good, it's bad again, and bland, but usually it tends to be somewhere around baffling. I have been hopelessly obsessed with this garbage, and hopefully you will be too. I was probably going to be around 2 to 3 hours of transfem furry yapping. Before we get into this, first, this is just my opinion, so don't go parroting it around unless you play the game first. And I do recommend you play the game blind before watching this, since it is a one-of-a-kind experience. Though, it was a bit of a pain in the ass to get this to work in the first place, so good luck. I had to, legally obtain a pre-patched ROM because the IPS just didn't work for some reason. Yes, I did patch Pokemon Ruby, not Emerald, but for whatever reason, it was allergic. Second, please don't harass Cutlerine for making a bad game 15 years ago. Everyone is capable of growth, and they're probably decent at writing now, or whatever it is that they do now. I don't know what that is, since nobody knows what Cutlerine is doing these days, since they left Poke Community in 2014, and it seems to be the only place they were using their username, as well as a Reddit account that they only use for talking about Snakewood, but I digress. Guess it kind of makes the point about not harassing them moot, since you can't, but like, if you figure out how, don't do it. I am getting unreasonably upset at this fan game, not the person behind it, who I actually have a lot of respect for, since they managed to cram enough into a game that I have this much to say about it. Hope you're doing okay, Cutlerine, if against all odds you're watching a video about this mistake you made a decade and a half ago. But anyway, the video. Act 0. Somehow there is enough to say before the game even starts to have its own dedicated mini section. Okay, so the game starts up, and you're immediately graced with this glorious title screen. Oh god. This is probably responsible for a decent amount of the assumption this is nebulously edgy garbage the whole way through, or something creepypasta adjacent, which I wouldn't blame you for. Especially since whenever you look this game up, you get like weird fake box arts that tend to emphasize all of the creepy elements of it, one of which has that one stolen zombie Pikachu fan art that's used absolutely everywhere. But no, again, I should stress this, that's not what this game is, at least most of the time. Also, zombie Pikachu just isn't in this game. They made zombie edits of a handful of Pokemon, but not Pikachu. Seems like a bit of a Captain Obvious choice for a zombie Pokemon, but at least we did get zombie Poliwhirl, so you know, I can't be mad. Speaking of edits, that's what about 80% of Pokemon Snakewood's new sprites boil down to. Some of them are zombie themed, a lot of them aren't. There isn't anything inherently wrong with edits, especially when done well, but it is that thing you'll notice, especially with the jankier ones. Another thing you'll notice is that since this is an early hack of Pokemon Ruby, a lot of it is just Pokemon Ruby, even the title. Since the game does take place in Hoenn, it does make sense for most of it to be from base Ruby, which is also probably why it takes place in Hoenn, but it definitely gives it that early ROM hack smell, if that makes any sense. Enough elements are the same and enough are different, it sort of produces this weird brain fog effect, where you don't notice how weird it is that Route 101's music absolutely does not fit a zombie apocalypse. So it's just kind of like invisible, I guess? It's something you'd probably only notice if it was called attention to, but if this exists completely independently from Pokemon Ruby, you'd notice immediately. Anyway, let's talk about the actual fucking game, because this tangent's gotten a bit out of control, and we're not even past the title screen. So this game puts sort of a twist on the classic Pokemon intro thing. The text is from the MC talking to themselves rather than from a professor talking to the MC. This is one of Snakewood's most notable traits. Not only is the MC not a silent protagonist, unlike the canon protags, but they will not shut the hell up. Despite this, they never have anything interesting to say, nor do they have much in the way of a personality. The MC says out loud to nobody that they seem to have amnesia, and that they vaguely remember a few things such as Professor Birch and a zombified Bulbasaur. The MC is baffled at this, not Birch sending out the dead Bulbasaur that's just a result of technical limitations, but the Bulbasaur being dead to begin with, since in this continuity, Pokemon don't die. Even though they do, because later on there's a plot point that only exists because Rayquaza is fucking dead. It wasn't zombified or anything, no, it was shot over the Bristol Channel. Anyway, now it's time to meet the two wonderfully janky designed protagonists. I like how the Tamer, inexplicably having one eye that's completely blacked out, makes this guy like 20% edgier than intended. It is actually a pretty cool look, and while I am a fan of super edgelords, this guy kind of looks like a Dorkazoid on the overworld, so I'm going with the girl. You might have noticed that I've been conspicuously quiet about what their names are. Well, you have a few default options to choose from, as is standard, but they certainly are interesting. For the girl, the defaults are Ghost, Haunt, Jericho, and Loba, and the boy has Wraith, Shade, Dark, and I. Now, anyone with half a brain cell can tell this game's trying to be edgy here, but this is where it gets weird. There's an old Reddit AMA by Cutlerine himself on r/Pokemon ROM hacks done a few years after Pokemon Snakewood released. There's not actually any proof this is the real Cutlerine, but he talks exactly like how you'd expect the author of Pokemon Snakewood to talk, and he knows a few things that basically only he would know, so I believe him. And according to this AMA, his goal was always to make something silly. I don't know where else to bring this up, but I do not believe Cutlerine's memory here, since it absolutely does not add up unless Teenage Cutlerine was playing 5-dimensional chess, which is unlikely. And if you played this game, You know, Cutler's memory isn't exactly the best. In my opinion, I think it was in sort of a double-think superposition of when I made the serious, silly, and possibly deliberately narmy at the same time, and didn't consciously realize that because teenager. I'm going to keep assuming that because otherwise I will completely fall apart trying to comprehend this game, which is already incomprehensible enough as it is. Because if this is true, then I have to assume Teenage Cutlerine thought an apocalypse log of a kid seeing all of his friends being killed by zombies and then kill binding was silly. Feel free to come to your own conclusions on this, but the difference between when it's being edgy and when it's being silly is night and day. Trust me, I know the feeling of unclear and contradictory direction all too well. When I was like 12, I tried to make a faux bootleg-esque ROM hack of Mario 3 where everything was Pringles themed because Vinesauce Joel did that once for Dr. Mario. I tried to give it complex lore for some reason, which I remember absolutely none of, and I only stopped because I thought the ROM I made somehow got haunted. I wasn't very smart. The player then wakes up revealing this whole intro sequence was a dream, which makes sense as the rest of it doesn't. It then drops what might be the perfect introductory line to what this game actually is. Suddenly, you are elated by giant sharks with laser eyes. No, but seriously, you should leave. Not only is it just a complete tonal whiplash into random XD humor, but it also might be a glitch. Later on, you're unable to enter the abandoned ship because the game says so, and it gives the exact same message. It doesn't make much sense in either context, but it makes marginally less sense here, since the perspective randomly shifts from first person to second, and it's also a bit weird to describe waking up as leaving, so it's safe to say this wasn't intentional. So yeah, if all of that doesn't give you a perfect idea of what this game is like, then I don't know what will. This leads us to Act 1, the only part that's actually Pokemon with zombies. You wake up in Littleroot Town, which has undergone some slight renovations, presumably zombie-induced. And also there's a weird tiling glitch that doesn't show up in advanced map, so I don't know what the hell is happening here. This is one of the few times the music actually kind of fits the situation since it's completely silent because of a glitch. Before you're able to leave, you have to choose between one of 3 starter Pokemon that are just kind of lying around. You're not told what they are before choosing them, which doesn't pair well with the fact that they suck. Baltoy, Coughing, and Paris. What? I can only assume these starters were chosen either out of a need to feel unique or just randomly because, well, the thing about starter Pokemon is that they're designed to be, like, good. And no, you can't take multiple of the starters since even though the trainer is presumed dead, stealing is wrong, and I guess it takes priority over leaving a Pokemon stuck in a ball until it starves. After picking up one of the bargain bin starter invitations, you find Professor Birch being chased by a zombie. I will admit, Birch being chased by a zombie instead of a wild Zigzagoon is actually a pretty fun twist. So you have to engage a battle with it in order to save Professor Birch. It sends out a zombified Bulbasaur. Sorry, where are my manners? I meant Bulbasaur. All the zombified Pokemon have like Shark Tail type naming for some reason, just creepy instead of wet. The zombie dies instantly upon losing a Pokemon battle, and Birch drops some very blandly written exposition about the MC having known him for years, apparently, and how they had an older brother and knew Birch's daughter May, but the MC forgot that along with basically everything, including the zombie plague. He then teleports you to a safe place in Oldale, that being the Pokemon Center. According to this guy, Birch wants to see us on Route 103. We're unable to leave to the west since this guy's here, so we have no other option. And now it's time for weird shit. For some reason in Snakewood's continuity, Pokemon have never been observed breeding in the wild apparently, but Professor Birch has just made the discovery of a lifetime since he found the first wild Pokemon egg, and apparently in this continuity Pokemon eggs can only be hatched by trainers, so Birch just gives the egg to you. He never follows up on this, nor is anything about this ever acknowledged ever again. But forget how none of that makes any logical sense. This egg, when it hatches into another egg. Despite being an egg, this is actually a Pokemon named Mystery Egg. You spend all the effort evolving this egg up to level 30, it evolves into Secret Egg, which looks exactly the fucking same. And then Secret Egg will then evolve further into Hyper Egg at level 43 for some reason, which also looks exactly the same. Hyper Egg can then be evolved a third time into one of 5 legendary Pokemon, Entei, Raikou, Suicune, Celebi, and unknown, but not just any unknown, because in this game it has a base stat total of 600. It's never elaborated on why this is like this, or why this legendary egg was in Route 103. It's just like that. Sure. Birch also tells you to go find Brendan, since, by the way, that's your brother. As well as May, because they were just kind of going around Hoenn for some reason. He wanted to do this to help fight the zombies, but this plot thread sort of outlives the zombies being relevant. This is the first and most recurring of the MC's many motivations of the week, as written on this chart I made in MS Paint. This is also where the protagonist's singular character trait starts to show. They will not stop with the lamp shading. It's only mildly annoying now, but it's going to get really annoying at a certain point. We will get back to this. Also, Brendan isn't called Brendan, he's called Landon, because that's the default name for the player character in Ruby version. These names are similar enough to the point that I just didn't notice at first. Birch also gives you the Pokephone, so you can serve as a sort of mission control. Anyway, this evil person's just here now for some reason, doing not much of anything. This is another major character, Alicia, this game's rival figure, who is also something called a Death Caller. She's actually a pretty decent character, if you can believe it. At least for a bit, before the incident. But that's a story for about an hour later. The important thing here is that she has a Sneasel. This is the second fight in the game, and she has a Sneasel, and one of the starter choices is Baltoy. You can't hit with Confusion, and all you have is Rapid Spin. Meanwhile, the Sneasel can just kill you. Thankfully, though, Pokeballs are available this early, but you still have to catch another Pokemon just so you can fight her. After beating her, she just kind of exits stage right. Yes, it's the right direction. Stage direction is the opposite of the audience direction. And she tells you her name so you could quiver in fear every time you hear it, even though it's just the normal-ass name. As one would expect, Route 102 is now infested with zombies. This trainer is seemingly optional, but don't skip it if you know what's good for you, especially if you've already disinvested enough that you wouldn't particularly care if this kid gets mauled by a zombie. Except she's not a zombie, because she's actually a ghost now. And then before you have any time to process that, she sends out Polyhag and Rotmander. Yeah, I wasn't exaggerating when comparing it to Shark Tale. The MC also has a flashback of their brother randomly telling them how to operate the running shoes. This is the first of many flashbacks, and it's for running shoes. There's no sign of Alicia in the now destroyed Petalburg, and not much really happens here. Notably, there's this lady, who you can't actually talk to because she's secretly a corpse. There are a handful of these secret corpses lying around Hoenn, but this one's the most helpful since it has leftovers in it. When trying to exit Petalburg, this guy appears, who recognizes us since we look like Landon. Which isn't true for the protagonist we're playing as, but okay. Actually, speaking of the other protagonist, you notice how they have white hair? And that they're allegedly supposed to look like Landon. I think this character was designed like this because Cutlerine assumes his hair like we all used to, which is very charming. I love it. Anyway, random guy McCutscene tells us that Landon and May passed by Petalburg Woods, which he knows somehow, and then he sacrifices himself so we can outrun a horde of zombies that have suddenly appeared. The fog got him. You could also go to Wally's house, which, what the fuck is that? What is that? Okay, so this is another glaring glitch in Snakewood that's both recurring and completely unavoidable. Whenever one of these crates load, which is all the time, the MC just turns gray. So if the MC is just a mysterious color, unlike any scene on Earth in the background footage, to just ignore that. This game was not play-tested. Also, I think I've understated how goofy the game's being right now because I haven't stated anything. In the same area as this girl crying about how everything's been taken from her by looters, we find out that Haiti and Germany exist, and that zombies have a weakness to sea air. So the cracks are already starting to show on this whole "this game's about zombies" thing for reasons that'll leave as an exercise for the viewer. In this bit in general, there are also a few other goofy elements, such as the deliberately comedically gruesome descriptions of corpses, which make the swerves back into pointless grim darkitude all the more bizarre, and it makes both fall flat since the tone is set to randomize. Entering Petalburg Woods, you encounter a new type of trainer. Survivors. These trainers tend to show up right before introducing a new plot point and be very melodramatic and ominous if there are things ahead. There's probably an attempt at build-up, but this guy is placed 19 steps away from the thing he's typing up. Anyway, now it's time to fight a levitating legless corpse possessed by a literal, actual demon, which is the edit of the female expert sprite for some reason, and is this game's first boss, Demon Corpse Zabulon. Not a mini-boss. A boss. in the exact same place the mini-boss was in vanilla, but its Pokemon are still leveled like Roxanne's Pokemon, and they also have way better moves than you have by this point, including Glare, a move that they don't normally learn. And not only that, but they're all a dark type, meaning that if you chose Baltoy, which would probably be your highest level Pokemon just out of laziness, you kind of just lose. It has a Murkrow, which is immune to both of your stab types, and Houndour doesn't have a head, and it's called Houndsour. Okay, let's take a breather. One thing you've probably noticed by now about Snakewood is that it's really fucking weird. But it's usually weird in a very specific way. When it hits you with something weird, it also blindsides you with like 5 other weird things at the exact same time, of which 4 are gameplay relevant and like half of those things are completely unintentional. Things just sort of happen at you in this game. This right here, in my opinion, is the primary charm of Snakewood. It fries your brain in a way that only an early ROM hack really can, and it gradually becomes more and more of a fever dream. Like, we haven't even gotten to the film college yet. That's not a joke. That's not an exaggeration, that is a thing that happens later on. Fucking film school. But, okay, let's get back to the levitating legless corpse. After the demons defeat it, it drops a stone badge, which is probably where you first figure out that was supposed to be a boss and not a mid-boss, since it absolutely does not feel like the former. It's in the middle of the map where the old mini-boss was, because that's what was convenient. We continue forth to Rustboro since, well, maybe Brendan and May were here, or maybe because we want to fight the demons. It's mostly just because that's the next place that exists. Also, don't talk to this head. Do not talk to this head. It will attack you and you will lose. I don't know why the Jinx is called II now. That's not even a pun. There's another rival battle with Alicia here that you have to do because the player character says so. We learned that Alicia's trainer class of Death Caller wasn't just edgy sounding flavor text, since that's apparently the name given to servants of Lord Gravetrick? Gravetrick? Gravitrick? Okay, silly name aside, I don't know how to pronounce this, so I'm just gonna go with Gravetrick since it sounds the coolest. So you beat her, she tells you she's going to Verdanturf. I struggled making this part interesting in the script. It's not interesting. Also, the rival's leitmotif starts playing after you defeat her, and it doesn't stop playing after she leaves. A few steps north and we meet 2 new characters, swerving the plot in a brand new direction. Glyce, some edgelord that seems to have vague magic powers of some sort, including casting a field of invisibility, and Dantalion, his demon servant. Why is there a random Japanese character there? We seem to know about a mysterious group of other guys with powers, maybe, whose name starts with the F, which is probably the main question you're asking right now. You may also be wondering, hey, why can the protagonist see them even though they're supposed to be in a field of invisibility? And how can this guy cast a field of invisibility and have a demon servant? Isn't this supposed to be Pokemon? Well, that will be explained very soon. They also drop some exposition that the vessel summoning the demons is in Rusturf Tunnel, in case you weren't already going to Verdanturf because Alicia. The MC then says that they recognize them for some reason. This is never explained. Walking a bit further forward, Glyce apparently recognizes us, or at least mistakes us for someone else. Not because we look like them. No, that would be too simple. It's because we have goddamn magic eyeballs. It's never explained why. Glyce then tests you to make sure you're actually up to the task since you want to take down the demons because an old lady asked you to. That's the reason given. Even though talking to the old lady is completely optional. And then you battle him, and you immediately see Glyce's trainer class. Taoist? For the unfamiliar, Taoism is a philosophy that was created in China and spread throughout East Asia. It's an incredibly complex series of beliefs, or at least I think it is because there are a lot of words here, and what remains of my brain is refusing to process any of them. None of that is true in Pokemon Snakewood, because in this game, it's a type of magic that lets you control zombies and demons, and also whatever the plot demands. And then he immediately sends out fucking Face Leech. He's awesome. If you're wondering why this is, according to Cutlerine himself, it was taken from a manga called Zombie Loan, where that's also a thing for some reason. And apparently Cutlerine included it in Snakewood since he knew it didn't make much sense already, which is kind of funny. But this is what I think set the precedent for, fuck it, Just throw whatever in, that will quickly become this game's modus operandi. After proving yourself worthy, Glyce heads to Rusturf Tunnel, and you head to Rusturf Tunnel, and Glyce explains this random girl is being used as a vessel to summon demons from the pit, and Glyce turns off the demon portal using Dow magic, I think, but you have to fight a few demons because they saw it closing and don't want it to close. The pit is literally never brought up again, nor elaborated upon, despite seemingly being important, but they probably meant the underworld, since that's a thing, by the way. Anyway, this is what the demons look like. I don't know why they feel the need to possess old people when they clearly have a physical body that is also a Brock edit with Grout on hand. You fight two of them with identical teams consisting solely of Anorith. It's not even like a demon Anorith, it's just an Anorith. After beating them, Glyce completes the Dow magic spell. The kid we met 5 seconds ago dies. Oh no! And now the demons are just kind of taken care of, and that plot point only shows up again one more time. Also, we have to do a thing in Verdanturf, remember? Also, that's a smoldering crater. Remember Verdanturf? This is what it looks like now. Feel old yet? The MC has a flashback of someone named Pestilence attacking them at some point in the past. Then they just sort of pass out and fall down and immediately wake up and say to nobody that they must have passed out and fallen down. Also, you're inconveniently placed right next to Pestilence because God forbid any buildup lasts for more than a single area. Now this next cutscene actually establishes something for once, so listen the fuck up. Apparently Pestilence is not only responsible for destroying Littleroot, but he's the one that erased the protagonist's memories in the first place. We also find out who this elusive F are. That being the actual ass 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, who are just a thing in Pokemon now. Like, it's not even metaphorical, they are explicitly stated to be supernatural. Pestilence is a bit of a pain in the ass due to the level curve still being bullshit, but it's not that much of a pain in the ass. Only a lot. Pestilence is like the one boss that isn't a pain in the ass if you chose Baltoy. It actually makes it easier because all of her Pokemon are poison type. That does not mean that Baltoy is an even remotely worthwhile starter choice, because everything else is just so bad if you choose it. After beating her, we find that this is apparently the 4 Horsemen's base, even though there's nothing here. And then they just go to make another one. Alicia also brings up the fact that we're apparently disguised. Glyce also brought this up earlier, but I just assumed he mistook us for another character who doesn't show up until later. So, you might be wondering what they meant by this then, since surely if 2 people brought it up, it must be important, right? I'm also wondering this, because it's never explained. More interestingly though, we find that Alicia apparently had a history with the MC, but it seems circumstances forced her to work for the Horsemen. It also seems the Horsemen have crossed paths with May, since Pestilence has her Pokedex, so that's maybe or maybe not important. Also, I already said this, and it's like this for 90% of Snakewood, but it's especially apparent here while all this plot shit is happening. The music is just Verdanturf's music, which is like the most peaceful ass song in this entire game. Back on Route 116, Bert's directed to go to Dewford since apparently Landon and May were spotted there a bit ago, so that's the next location. He also says that Dewford has been completely unaffected by the plague due to being an island, meaning the zombie relevance meter will soon plummet to 0%. Since Mr. Briney's a no-go due to this guy who says he got bitten by him, either because he's a zombie or just because he's like that, we'll need the HM for Surf as well as a balance badge. This change of pace is actually pretty creative, I gotta say. Since we've already checked all of the other routes, the only available option seems to be Route 115. Okay, so obviously you need Cut here, but we don't have that, and it doesn't seem like Cut is anywhere reasonable. Though, there was that cave by the Charizard plush. You might have missed this cave, or even the possibility that you're able to go there, since for some reason you have to take this route around the map, which it's not obvious you can do, since the map directs you away from it. And while the cave is a point of interest, you might just assume, like I did on my first playthrough, that it's part of a later thing. Even though I had already watched Picasby's playthrough of this a while ago and should have theoretically remembered how this went. But no, this place is accessible, and this Charizard plush is actually just a Charizard. And as for the cave, just see for yourself. There's a lot I could say here, but I feel like the best way to convey how this feels would be to... Now that you have access to Route 115, you'll find a few things. A dead guy who has a Pokeball on him, though by this point your team's probably full so it won't let you pick it up. And the last survivor from Petalburg Gym, who passed to challenge you to a Pokemon battle to defend its honor, apparently. So you beat her, it's pretty easy, you get the balance badge, but the HM for Surf is still nowhere to be found. Great! More HM hunting. Okay. Let's play a little game. I call it Guess Where the Surf HM Is. I call it that because it's the game where you guess where the Surf HM is. Give up? The dead guy's Pokemon was carrying it. Even though you can't normally give HMs to Pokemon as a hold item. Anyway, now we can surf to Dewford, and apparently old-timey pirates are a thing now. I thought that made sense at first, but then I realized it doesn't. But I don't know why I'm critiquing this game based on how much sense anything makes, given that's clearly not the goal. Like, there's this one swimmer that implies that casual trainer battles are a thing of the before times, but... well, as you'll soon see, that's far from true. This part is where the game goes from being somewhat weird to very weird, and where it stops feeling like a ROM hack of Pokemon Ruby to a really weird, really long dream about Pokemon Ruby. Remember earlier when I said the random edition of Anime Taoist set a precedent for anything to be thrown in? This is where things just fully start getting thrown in. Act 2. The fun part. So there's no sign of Landon or May on Dewford, and the protagonist just doesn't feel like asking around. You're unable to enter Granite Cave because there's a roaring noise inside it, and the protagonist is scared, I guess. The gym is still intact since no zombies. And apparently the gym leader is someone named Haruko, because Brawley's in the Kahuto region, wherever that is. You can't actually go there, and I'm assuming this was just a region from one of Cutlerine's previous unreleased hacks. Yes, he made other hacks. That will be important soon. You can also get a TM for Ice Punch for some reason, which is actually pretty useful. Thank you, random lady who gives you the Ice Punch TM. Was it a lady? I don't remember. I don't care. Anyway, Dewford seems to be a bust, so let's see what's in the next town. Is what I would say, if it would let us go to the next town. Because if you tried to go to Slateport, suddenly the MC wants to battle Haruko, because it would be such a shame to miss out on battling a gym leader. You can't progress, because the player character said so. This leads us to one of the worst parts of the game. And the point we're claiming this game is just Pokemon with zombies is an exercise in cognitive dissonance. Haruko's Gym. What can only be described as a very painful, mandatory side quest. First off, the maze is now completely different from how it was in vanilla, and the circle of light never grows. Because this is a Dark-type gym now, and that's being taken literally here. Since it's a Dark-type gym, that also means it's even more of a pain in the ass if you chose Baltoy. And since you can't go into Granite Cave right now, you can't get a Makuhita for the gym trainers. Also, the Shinx line was backported into this game, and they're all in this gym because ROM hacks really love making this line Dark-type, even though Shinx itself still isn't one in this game. That wouldn't be so bad if Wingull wasn't one of the 3 good Pokemon available by this point, so it's definitely on your team. And after getting through the basically invisible maze and reaching Haruko, you want to know the cherry on top. She won't let you fight her yet, because there's rumors that there's something in the Solar Caverns. Oh right, Granite Cave is actually called Solar Caverns now because Groudon's sunlight got stuck in it somehow. So now, we have to do a second mandatory side quest in order to do this mandatory side quest. You better have bought repels from the looter guy in Endless Plains, because that's the only place you can buy them. Thankfully, since Groudon's sunlight got stuck in Solar Caverns, we don't have to use Flash, which I'm very grateful for. While descending the Solar Caverns, you hear occasional roaring which the protagonist comments on every time. The third time, you have a flashback of someone saying, "Graog, our contract is terminated." This was an attempt at foreshadowing the next thing that happens, a real-ass dragon. Not a dragon Pokemon, an actual real-ass dragon. This is what happens when your mentality for designing a game is /HJ. Anyway, the real-ass dragon mentions that our contract has been terminated again, I guess in case we forgot, which We did, but then we unforgot, so and he also says that he's joined the Horsemen. The MC remembers its real name, Meteor the Dragon King. Pretty cool moniker, really weird in this game. This isn't supposed to be silly, at least I don't think it is, I don't know. This is just kind of a thing that happens. And then before you have any time to process that, he sends out another real-ass dragon, aptly named Dragon. And before you have time to process that, it hits you with Fire Pump, which is what Flamethrower is called now, even though that's a much worse name for it. You'll probably lose against Dragon because it's level 22 and has a base stat total of 541, which is also slightly higher than the Charizard that it replaces. And also, yes, the dragons in this game are edits of Charizard, even though Charizard is famously not a dragon type. Not really a complaint, that would be a CinemaSins tier nitpick at best, but it is the thing that's funny, so I am legally obligated to mention it. Not exactly complaining about whatever the hell's going on here, so much as I am utterly baffled at all of this. Though I do have a problem with the battle since, well, it sucks. Thankfully though, there are some pretty good Pokemon in the Solar Caverns. Makuhita, and what the fuck is that? Everyone, please meet Hombone. For some reason, I removed the part where I introduced Hombone. I removed that from the script. I don't know why I did that. After winning, Meteor asks if it's possible that you didn't lose all your power. I don't know what this means. He also declares his intent to destroy Dewford at some later point for some reason. He never does this. But anyway, now that mandatory side quest for a mandatory side quest that just so happened to tie into the main plot by sheer coincidence is done, we can get back to our regularly scheduled mandatory side quest, fighting Haruko. If you thought all of the previous boss battles were hard, you haven't seen anything yet. First off, before we get into the battle, let's talk about Haruko. Haruko is not from Pokemon Snakewood. She's actually a character crossing over from the anime FLCL, pronounced Fooly Cooly. I have not watched Fooly Cooly, but I feel like watching it will not give the context for why she has a team of 6 Pokemon, half of which are a way higher level than yours to be at this point, most of which are way better and know the move Shadow Swipe, a brand new Ghost type move with 90 base power, 90 accuracy, and a chance to crit. And again, this is a Dark type gym, making this a second major boss battle with a team of only Dark types. You're probably considering throwing that Baltoy in the garbage where it belongs by this point. And unless you save beforehand, every time you lose, you'll have to go through the maze again and read about Haruko's dumbass anti-air gun. And this isn't even the end of it. You see, while her highest level Pokemon is her Luxray, Luxray is not her ace. Her real ace is this thing. King Mario. King Mario, similar to Haruko, is not originally from Snakewood. It's actually from one of Cutlerine's older hacks, one that was never released to the public, called Pokemon Solar. And you can really tell, since this thing isn't even a 256th of a Pal World. What the fuck is this, and why is it a Pokemon? Now, despite its intimidating aura, and the fact it's attached to Haruko, this is actually the easy part. Kind of. You are basically guaranteed to win 100% of the time against Haruko's King Mario. It's level 1, and it only knows Splash. But there's a catch. Its ability is Wonder Guard, which means it can only take damage from super effective moves and status. And its type is Dark Ghost, which is only weak to Fairy, a type that does not exist in Generation 3, nor did it exist when this game was made, meaning it's completely unaffected by attacking moves. That wouldn't be so bad on its own if you didn't only have access to 2 damaging status moves by this point, one of which is Supersonic, which I shouldn't even have to explain the problem with, and the other of which is Poison Gas, which is locked on Coughing. Hi, Nova from the future here. Ignore past Nova's ramblings reading off of more past Nova's script, describing a slightly misremembered version of Pokemon Snakewood. You can get a Shroomish. It learns Leech Seed at level 10, which is easily the best move to deal with King Mario at this point in the game. No, I don't know how I missed this. I could have sworn I checked as thoroughly as I could, but this knockoff Goomba managed to elude me. This would still be bad design even if I had eyes that worked, since it's just a binary, do you have this type of move gate that you have to get a specific Pokemon for if you don't want to waste 55 turns? It's very clear this Pokemon was just thrown in the game as a meme. Dark Ghost with Wonder Guard was a fairly well-known thing before the Fairy type showed up and made it irrelevant. So, I guess it serves that purpose well, but there are so many other layers of unintentionally frustrating bullshit that's more than a little hard to appreciate in moments. King Muddy is one of the most famous / infamous Pokemon from this game, probably just because of how absurd everything about it is, especially its placement. And it's worth mentioning that as of writing this, the one and only gif of Pokemon Snakewood on Tanner is of King Mario. Well, okay, as long as you don't count all of the close enough gifs, because God forbid a search function be allowed to end no matter how many wrong results it gives. I had a bit of a weird experience facing Haruko this time around, since I remembered King Mario because how can you forget a face like that, but I forgot just about everything else. And it was so satisfying. Fuck you, Haruko from Hit Anime Fooly Cooly. I was already mentally prepared for the hour-long snooze fest that is this thing over here, even if it took several hours to actually get to that point. If you're not prepared for King Mario, though, well, there's a reason it's shaped like a blue ball. I'm willing to bet that half of the same people playing this game rage quit at this point and never picked it up again. But I'm neither sane nor people. We're seeing this train wreck to the end come hell or high water. And it's not like it can get any worse than Haruko, right? Act 3. The Island of Calm was worse than Haruko. Now, despite the entire plot having to be redirected just to do this battle for the sake of doing it, Haruko literally never shows up again in the entire game. So the only reason doing this was important was because Meteor happened to be here, which was completely unrelated to the unnecessary gym battle. So you after beating her, that's what I typed. You get the Miasma badge and the TM for bulk up. And once you walk back to the entrance, Professor Birch gives you a call, asking you if you found anything about Landon and May. And apparently the MC just forgot! Which by this point you probably did too, since you just had to do so much unrelated bullshit that just happened to be plot relevant. Birch tells you to stop wasting time, and only now are you able to tuck these people in the Dewford house. Jesus Christ. The MC calls Birch back to inform them, and they pat themselves on the back because they thought they sounded awesomely cryptic, apparently. So now we have to go to the desert. Anyway, here's Telson. It's a quillfish, but it's differently colored. It's unobtainable, and it's only seen on this one trainer on Route 108 whose only other Pokemon is a quillfish, which are also a lot more common in this game because it replaces Tentacool for some reason, even though Quillfish was already in the game's data. Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said this game felt like a dream. Like, no joke, while I was playing this, I had a dream about a gray and purple colored version of a Pokemon from this very game that was apparently its evolution appearing in a joke Homestuck Flash that was apparently a secret, sort of like S-Ride. Dreams are just like that. Anyway, did you know that the Snakewood wiki is god-awful? I mean, fandom wikis in general are god-awful, but this one especially. This is Telson's entire page as of writing this, and I think about it every time I think about Telson, which is frequently. This is the one for Alicia, and it's even more inexplicable. No, that's not an ad. That's just the image that they put at the bottom right. There is a page called Delete This, Pissballs, that is a candidate for deletion, but hasn't been deleted. It used to be a redirect to the page Q, which does not exist. As far as I'm aware, it has never existed, and this page has also just been here since 2021. The entries for 3 late-game Pokemon seem to have been written by some kid. Okay, I'm checking the page history. This was the original version. And for like over a year, it was just completely blank. I'm like going down a rabbit hole in real time, except it's not real time because I said that while I was writing the script and now it's later. For some reason, all these pages were created by someone named Poo Poo Big Boy Gamer Poop on November 21st. For some reason, all these pages were created by someone named Poo Poo Big Boy Gamer Poop on November. For some reason, all of these pages were created by some... No, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in a corpsing loop. You can read what it says. Also, there are two wikis, the Pokemon Snakewood wiki and the Pokemon Snakewood wiki. The latter is actually competent, but it's still very incomplete. But that said, the worst wiki always comes up first when searching. What the fuck was this video supposed to be about again? Anyway, the protagonist still won't let you into Slateport unless you go to the seashore house, cause the protagonist thinks there's something weird about it, in which you will encounter Marvin Grossberg, who is here for reasons that are never explained. Just kidding. It's an evil chef. It screams key at you, sends out a munchlax, and then books it never to be seen again. The protagonist deduces that the evil chefs that are now a thing must have been Famine's doing, since that's one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, and this seems like a famine-y thing to do. So now you have to fight former chefs, not zombies. Former chefs, and they all have teams consisting of munchlax, which kind of makes sense, and Curlia, which doesn't. Not zombie variants, just regular versions of the Pokemon. Everyone is taking this deathly serious, so I think the silly switch is supposed to be off, but it's anyone's guess what the tone is supposed to be here. So you encounter a few more chefs in Slateport before getting blocked off from the north by one of Snakewood's iconic crates, and need the Arclight spanner, which we don't have. So we have to interact with the water inside the doghouse, and instead of surfing, it prompts you to check out something that's below the surface of the water, which you might not notice, because you might just assume it's the normal surf text, but it's not the normal surf text, because you fall into this place. Welcome to the SS Congrejo. It's a submarine. You walk around this bit that makes zero Euclidean sense, and you meet this guy named Usher who tells you what I just said, and he mentions a bunch of other proper nouns that I don't know because they're probably for Pokemon Solar, which is not available to the public. He then asks you to fix the engine, and he tells you to clear out Sea Devils before immediately retracting his statement. Congrejo also seems to be the name of another Cutlerine hack, and the title of the anime implies it's public, but I can't find it anywhere, so I don't know if that's connected to this or not. Also, Congrejo is Spanish for crab. It is worth mentioning that these maps are actually completely unique, and are some of the first maps that aren't edited versions of pre-existing ones. That is kind of impressive, but why here? Why are we busting out all the chops for the submarine that just kind of happens? To fix the engine, you also need an Arclight spanner, which is located on this random shelf. I don't know how I figured that out on my first playthrough, but I'm glad I did, and also I remembered it. Usher then teleports near you, and then teleports you to Route 110, and then the submarine is gone, leaving you to wonder what the hell just happened. And now you're able to access the rest of Slateport. The entire population is located at the mart, which they've stocked up with food, since obviously the evil chefs don't like food, because normal chefs do and these ones are evil. There isn't really anything here, so now you have to go to Route 110. You're a group of some people saying to move out, which the protagonist assumes to be a military band, but it can't possibly be that because their theme song sounded decidedly evil. Yes, the military, famously known for not being evil. This lady's talking about wanting to see her parents again, and you quickly meet another melodramatic survivor, so now it's trying to be serious again. After all that. Anyway, then you find out what that guy was warning you about, and also what that cutscene was about. Meet the Inquisition. These guys are what Route 110 has decided to be about, and they all have Hombone for some reason. If you're wondering what these guys' deals are, that'll be explained in a bit. There's only one evil chef on this route, presumably just to remind you that, oh yeah, the chefs are still a thing. On the topic of, oh yeah, that's still a thing, Glyce is back. He's just casually watching a battle between the Inquisition and some zombies, and he invites you to watch. Turns out their deal is that they used to be a part of Hoenn's government, but since the zombies ate the rest of the government, the Inquisition have just taken over Hoenn. Which is why we're only hearing about them after 3 badges. We then meet a new character, Chloe, the leader of the Inquisition, who makes her grand debut with 2 zombie slaves walking inside other NPCs. This game was not playtested. She then clears away the other zombies by telling them to leave, which is apparently a Taoist power. Taoists are also a close-knit group in this universe, which is why they know each other. and Chloe is apparently against Glyce because she thinks he's responsible for the zombie outbreak. This was who I assumed Glyce mistook you for, since she also has magic powers, but that wouldn't really make much sense if you're playing as I for some godforsaken reason, since I is a dude. I kind of just forgot you can play as the dude in Pokemon games, but in my defense, who the fuck does that? He then tells you to go to New Marvel because Dan Tallion's there, and you'll find answers about Landon in May. Spoiler alert, you don't find answers about Landon in May because all you find is murder. I was going to put 4 really long super paragraphs here about the murder mystery you're forced to do in New Marvel, but you don't care and I don't care either. All you need to know is that the gym leader Watson was the culprit because of electric honey is a thing now. And he's also Inquisition, which means he's ontologically evil. And he fights you with level 100 Pokemon, so you black out and you have to press the off switch to the level 100 Pokemon machine that you couldn't before. And then you fight him again and it's moderately difficult. Here's every single arbitrary item rename because that was also going to be here. Speaking of Glyce, that line made more sense when I still had the 4 paragraphs about the murder mystery. Going into the gym, you find the Inquisition footman, recovering the badge and TM for Watson for some reason. Presumably because if we had those, we'd be able to get over this apparently insurmountable rock. He lets us know that we shouldn't rescue Glyce from their base. So now we have to rescue Glyce from their base. He also drops the TM but not the badge, which would have been a lot more helpful since... Remember how I said that Haruka was one of the worst parts of the game? That was mostly because a lot of the dumb gameplay shit going on was completely unintentional. You want to see what happens when Cutlerine starts doing it on purpose? Welcome to the Island of Calm. It's called that because it will frustrate you, and it is named ironically. Does anyone else remember growing up with Mario Maker? Yes, it's possible to have grown up with Mario Maker and be an adult because it's 10 years old. Anyone remember that and think that the epitome of level design was making things as frustrating and tedious as possible? I can only assume that Cutlerine was much the same when designing this bit. I will give it credit. It does do everything it sets out to accomplish pretty well, because this is one of the most frustrating experiences you'll go through in any Pokemon fan game. But before we get into that, let's talk about today's sponsor, the weirdest brain fart I've ever had. So, I knew this was gonna be bad going in, and I also knew that this game's level curve was dog shit. So imagine my surprise when I encountered a Kirlia at goddamn level 32, when my entire team was between levels 23 and 30. Unfortunately, Kirlia used Teleport, and instead of using a Pokeball, I used Thunder Wave in an attempt to paralyze it. There is only a 2% chance to encounter a Kirlia in the Island of Calm, and only a 1% chance to encounter one between the levels of 30 and 35. I did not know this, so I searched for another one. I spent an unreasonable amount of time on this, and I don't know why. I found and caught a level 27 Ralts, which didn't teleport away, but for some reason I just didn't settle for that, which I probably should have. After 6 minutes, done mostly in speed up mind you, so it probably would have been in the ballpark of 20 to 30 minutes in real time, I found another, this time at level 30. I had the foresight to not use Thunder Wave this time and instead go for a Great Ball. This did not matter. I spent about 3 more minutes looking for another, again, mostly in speed up, and encountered one at level 28, the lowest possible level, and only 1 level above the Ralts that I already had. I finally managed to catch this one, and I sarcastically named it Worth because it absolutely wasn't. This all took around 9 minutes, which doesn't sound like much, but it felt like an eternity in the moment. I don't know what possessed me to do this. I'm fully aware I'm gonna get some silly comments about this, given that Kirlia's evolution, Gardevoir, is Gardevoir, and there's always at least one irony-poisoned, sexually repressed asshole who feels like tainting every discussion of certain Pokemon with the same 3 to 5 stale, ironic jokes. No, I promise I didn't do this because I wanted to boink the Pokemon with a higher base stat total than anything in my team at the moment. I put my own Pokestone in my profile pic, I would have admitted it. Anyway, that's the story behind why this Kirlia is named Worth. You're just gonna see it in the background every now and again until I stop using it. Back to your regularly scheduled whatever the fuck. Upon entering the Island of Calm, you're greeted by another rare instance of the music fitting, that being the drought theme. It's fitting because it lets you know exactly what you're in for. You're forced to go through a very convoluted path through the woods, having to traverse through a lot of grass patches, so hopefully your bot repels. After a lot of walking, you find this guy guarding this rocky hill with a lot of cave entrances. This looks like it would be the entrance to the base, but it's not exactly clear how you're supposed to get in since there are so many caves. A sign tells us that in order to find out how to get into the base, we need to contact one of the advisors in the front rooms? I'm not sure if these are the front rooms or if this sign is just bullshit, because the quote-unquote advisors, well, there's something else. Oh, stumped on how to get in, are we? Well, if you can defeat all of us, the Inquisition's Deadly Seven, then we might just tell you where the entrance is. Please meet the Deadly Seven. They are one of the more memorable elements of Pokemon Snakewood, and that is for a good reason. A bad good reason, sure, but still a good reason. While they aren't written as such initially, the Deadly Seven act as annoying as humanly possible, speaking an unfunny word salad, and generally making an ass of themselves, all the while dressing like this. You might be wondering why they do that? The reason seems to be because they are ambiguously insane. Because nothing's wackier than mental illness. Despite the name, they aren't themed around the 7 deadly sins, nor are there 7 of them. There's 10. It would have been kind of funny if there were 8 of them, but then you encounter 2 more. Every time you encounter the Deadly Seven, you are almost always required to fight all of them in quick succession, and you encounter them multiple times throughout the game. The teams consist of multiple Pokemon from the same evolution family, making the battles very repetitive. I should also mention that 2 of the Deadly Seven use brand new Fakemon as their signature family line, as if this wasn't already hard enough on the noggin. Also, the second and third encounters are not only in the same dungeon as the first, but they're in the same room right next to each other, because they slid under the table. There's like a table here, and they all make jokes about the table, and like the worship table, and all hail the table. And on top of all that, while the Deadly Seven might be annoying on their own, what makes it all the worse is the MC, who feels the need to lampshade absolutely anything and everything, or just point out the obvious for no reason. The Deadly Seven won't shut up, and the MC won't shut up, and nobody shuts the fuck up. But here's the weird thing about the Deadly Seven. Okay, outside of everything I just said, here's the weird thing. I kind of fucking love them. Like, I didn't at the time. Definitely not when I wrote that last paragraph. But at some point I just started appreciating how bullshit they are. There's just something about them that's just so iconic, you know? Like, they're so ridiculous, over the top, and unique that it sort of just sticks out in your mind. Like, okay, there's one of them, Sputnov, whose gimmick is that he keeps using paranoia as a noun, and I thought this was like a reference to some anime because it seemed very anime and that seemed like a Cutlerine thing to do. But this is actually a reference to a translation error in Pokemon Quartz. And it uses paranoia as a noun to mean coincidence or weird shit. But also it doesn't make sense here at all because he's saying it as if it were like an attack. That's just so fascinating to me, whatever the hell is going on here. And like, the name of the Deadly Seven is clearly meant to invoke the 7 deadly sins, but they have like little to no relation to that at all. And the fact they look like this and talk like this and just like, what the f- The more I think about it, the more I can't stop thinking about it. I think the main reason I'm obsessed with the Deadly Seven is that all of the layers of shallow what the fuck somehow combine into a much deeper level of what the fuck, if that makes any sense. Really, I think the main problem I have with the Deadly Seven is that the protagonist is also there, delivering the same repetitive lines about how much they suck. Anyway, we're still at the Island of Calm. Oops! This place has such iconic hits as trying to go in all of the right caves, you try to exit any of them, you get sent back to here, and if you try to exit that, you get sent back here, and you have to walk all this way back, and you're required to do this a minimum of 6 times since all of the Deadly Seven members are in caves, and you're not allowed to progress until you beat all of them. The real entrance to the base secretly being on this sign at the start, even though if you read it prior to Asimov's hint, then it does absolutely nothing. The room with an invisible path that sends you to the start if you fuck up, and the only thing guiding you is the fact that it's nearest to the tables, and also you have to fight all the Deadly Seven again, twice. A room that spirals inward with a bunch of forced encounters with weak Pokemon that provide no challenge, meaning that it only serves to waste your goddamn time. A random staircase that leads right back outside, and an honest-to-God Mario Maker style pick-a-path where the wrong answers lead to an unwinnable battle against something called the Shatteroo. And before you get ideas of trying to capture this, no, this is a trainer battle against the Pokemon. So you can't come back here with a Master Ball and try to catch it, even if the boss battle was still active if you try to come back with a Master Ball, because it isn't. Yes, that's how bad the level curve is. I tried to go back to the Island of Calm just to get a high-level Pokemon. Remember when this game was grim, dark, and edgy? I miss that. Again, I should stress this. The Island of Calm does everything it sets out to do very well, and it's not an inherently bad thing to incite painful emotions in a player. That's half the reason Open Heart Surgery without anesthetic is such a popular party game. So this is technically well done, though most of the frustration does come from the tediosity of it, and also the sudden pivot to being a rage game for this segment does not mesh well with, like, all of the other things in this game that don't mesh well with each other already. Inciting emotions that tend to happen when you fuck up, like anger or boredom, on purpose, is really hard to pull off effectively if you're doing literally anything else, especially if there's also unrelated stuff that incites it by accident. And I doubt the MC's repetitively lampshady dialogue here was intended to be yet another layer of intentionally aggravating bullshit, since their dialogue is repetitively lampshady all the time anyway. This is yet another one of the reasons this game is really hard to analyze, because this part makes me feel angry, but it also feels like it's making me feel angry wrong. I should emphasize that all of my opinions are purely subjective, because how the fuck does that work? Thankfully, after clearing all of that, the fuckery sort of just stops. After defeating the Inquisition double act, you finally find the captured Glyce. In case you forgot that was the point of doing this by now. He is surrounded by a moat of lava, except it turns out this isn't actually lava, it's boiling orangeade. I didn't even know orangeade was a real thing until I looked it up. I thought that was like the Cutlerine way of saying orange juice. But yeah, you could just kind of surf across, and that's why the surf text has been changed to "'tis a liquid of some sort." Glyce explains that the Inquisition jumped him and stole his Pokegear that has built-in Dow magic somehow, just go with it. And you have to get it back from this random scientist who wants it for his research, even though he works for Chloe, who's also a Taoist, and I don't know, he could have just asked Chloe nicely, hey, can I research on you or something? The Dow magic infused Pokegear also lets him utilize Glyce's Pokemon, which he battles you with. This guy also looks like he secretly fills his canteen with radioactive sludge and is named Dr. Malfeasance, which means malpractice. So you beat him, he's surprisingly honorable and gives us not only Glyce's Pokegear, but the Dynamo badge, since we defeated Watson way earlier. You go back to Glyce, who feels the insurgents. I just straight up typed the wrong word in the script just now. He feels the Inquisition's presence, which goes without saying given that we're in their base, but what he probably means is that they want a word with the MC's jugular. So he teleports you out with the Pokegear, because I guess Dow can just do anything. And he decides to beat up a bunch of Inquisition members before teleporting out, since he's a little petty. Keep that in mind, because he is one of the both fun characters in this game, and this is the only character trait anyone has outside of good, evil, secretly evil, or crazy. Also, Dr. Malfeasance never shows up ever again. Glyce fucking killed someone. There's like one bird, like chirping right out my window at like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I don't know why it's doing that. I don't know why it's chirping in like a very rhythmic and repetitive manner either. You're just gonna hear that, probably. Act 4. The one actually kinda good bit. For a bit. Minute 1, and we are introduced to another brand new thing the game has decided exists now. On Route 111, which is now called Famine's Desert, there is just a troll. The troll's gimmick is that they fight you with more than 6 Pokemon, which is done here as 7 Pokemon over 4 battles for some reason. It is never explained why these guys suddenly exist in Pokemon, and that will continue to be a theme. I doubt the explanation would have made much sense since... well, you'll see. You'll see what Snakewood's like when it tries to explain things. Also, yeah, the chefs are still a thing. They never stopped being a thing, and that will make itself very apparent here, because as stated earlier, they only have 2 Pokemon lines, which tends to drag a little after the 5 billionth battle. Anyway, if you go down here like I didn't, and I'm doing after recording the main bit, you'll find a Hoenn military camp, because the Hoenn military is somehow both a thing and still a thing, and they try to recruit a 16-year-old. Yes, the military, famously known for not being evil. Thankfully, the protagonist is at least smart enough not to join the military, and you can hit them with the curse of rapid aging afterwards, like I did. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because they're the news crew, and they've been edited to have weapons, which is hilarious and genius and absolutely necessary to mention. More important than these bootlickers is the plot, which starts to get kind of interesting for a bit. Approaching this awkward ledge arrangement, you get a flashback that further hints at the past between Alicia and the MC. After a battle with two inconveniently placed chefs, Famine realizes that you exist, and against all odds, suddenly reveals something we've been wanting to know all game: the exact location of Landon and May. Well, not the exact location, but we do know they won't be moving from there anytime soon, since they've been captured by the Floor Horsemen. Apparently they tried taking on something Pestilence ominously refers to as his pet, and he also implies that Lord Gravetric used to know us personally, before he misgendered us because Cutling forgot that people might want to choose someone that isn't I for whatever reason. Anyway, he runs off so Alicia can fight you, and after battle she says this line, which does not make any sense even when given the context you're about to be given, so in case you thought the writing was starting to pick up, yeah, no. Then you get a call from Professor Birch, and he says that you have to go to the Mountain Monastery now. You know, the monastery that was built where Lava Ridge used to be after Mount Chimney erupted and destroyed it. The one that's also not called the Mountain Monastery. Yeah, that Mountain Monastery. You have to talk to Sage Kanzaki for reasons. By the way, ice demons are a thing now, not that you know from their overworld sprites. And you may be wondering, hey, why are there ice demons instead of fire demons since this is near an active volcano? Doesn't that conflict with the theming? No, it doesn't, because the fiery path is now frigid way. Why is fiery path now frigid way? Because when Mount Chimney erupted, that made the inside cold, since all of the hot fell out. Anyway, in the totally not out of place monastery, you'll find these statues of some guy called Barkesh. There's a random gag about he's supposedly human, but doesn't look like one. Remember that. This will be important later. Way later. Sage Kanzaki also tells you to fight the monster that another character, Izumi, is attacking, which is back in the desert. This monster is the same monster that Brendan nearly defeated before getting captured, and is apparently responsible for making the desert even more desert-y. And it's right next to where we just were when we got the phone call telling us to come here. And not only that, but you could literally see it prior to doing this. And the only reason you couldn't challenge it yet? The MC just didn't feel like it until the guy told them to. That was all completely pointless, but at least we didn't have to go through another Haruko. It turns out this incredibly hyped up monster that's been laying waste to the earth was responsible for Brendan and May's capture and happens to look like an Aerodactyl with the wrong colors on the overworld. It's literally just an Aerodactyl with the wrong colors. That's kind of really stupid, and it definitely should have been at the very least a zombie edit, but I'm not gonna look to gift level 40 Aerodactyl in the mouth because holy hell is this Pokemon good at this point of the game. Anyway, I may share another personal anecdote. After a flagrant violation of the Pokemon Trainer Bro Code and catching someone else's quote-unquote pet, I found another demonic Pokemon recolor, so I killed just to prove a point to Landon. It's not that hard. That was a full-on shiny. I thought that was just a glitch, and it accidentally kept the Make Pokemon Shiny flag on or something, and I killed it because I thought it would be funny. No, that was really the next encounter. Moving on. So now this guy allows you to ascend the mountain. He wouldn't do that earlier. And oh hey, the Inquisition is back. They're battling the ice demons that are still a thing and still look like normal people. Speaking of normal people, just kidding, it's the Deadly Seven again. Don't worry, you only have to fight half of them this time. Doesn't mean we don't get iconic lines like, Karkov I am, speak weirdly I do. Yoda? No young one, Karkov I am.
Oh, brother!
Disregarding the Blue Fro group, Famine and Chloe are having a wizard battle at the top, which Famine quickly wins, and then he decides not to battle you and wait for when he's better prepared, and he just leaves. But it would have been a lot better if you actually fought him here, since, spoiler alert, you never actually fight him, even though he's been set up for this entire arc. Hell, he's been set up since the Seashore House. Who remembers the Seashore House by this point? The MC then checks up on Chloe, who recognizes he was the kid who fucked with the Inquisition, and then the MC then draws what might be one of, if not the alliance in this entire game. Yes, you're the bad guys. Glyce and I are the good guys. That's how it works. As fate may have it, though, that is not how it works. Glyce has actually been evil the whole time. He may be fighting against the Four Horsemen, but that's only because he's actually working for another evil guy who opposes them. You see, Hoenn actually being invaded by 2 different evil groups. Why is it being invaded by 2 different evil groups the exact same time? It's never explained, but these guys seem to both be from the underworld and are both responsible for the zombie apocalypse. The west bit is controlled by the Four Horsemen, and the east bit's controlled by Asuka R. Kreutz, and his team that's only ever referred to as the Forces of the East, because they're at the east bit. No, it's not actually Asuka R. Kreutz from Guilty Gear, but I can't believe that's actually plausible by this point. The game really likes calling him that man until his name's revealed, or at least it does in one specific segment to way later. So, until then, I'm just going to be calling him Asuka R. Kreutz for convenience. I'm just now realizing this. The Forces of the East, one of the major factions in this game, they're never given a proper name. I think that might be why this game was so hard for me to follow without just writing it down. Why weren't they given a name? Anyway, Glyce being evil is actually a twist that kind of makes sense, since there's just enough of an aura about him, you know? This is the closest any character in this game gets to being likable in my opinion, but that might just be because of my affinity for super edgelords. Anyway, after this reveal, Chloe then tells you that she needs your help since you defeated Pestilence and you're strong or something. Now the Inquisition are on your side, which is why I had to keep track of characters' allegiances to you on a timeline, because they'd flip at the drop of a hat. She goes back to the base, not that one. That was just the secondary base apparently, and the real one's in Fall Arbor Town, because that's the place. You've probably noticed by now this game just mostly just follows the exact same path as Ruby with like slight tweaks. Like it might be in like different orders, but you got all the bits in the first bit, and then all the bits in the second bit, and then all the bits in the third bit, and so on and so forth. Sage Izumi from earlier then comes out of nowhere and declares you a pure soul for driving the demons and Inquisition out, which we didn't do, but thanks. He then ejaculates that we can choose to enter the sacred Shakyamuni Tower. That choice is actually not a choice because we have to. For some reason, the Shakyamuni Tower uses the intro music as its music since you can just do that. It doesn't actually loop, so after a certain point it's just silence. I have nothing else to add other than this guy. As for the plot stuff, you talk to the Elder for... What? More information about Landon? We already know he's been captured by the Horsemen, right? Except... Nope! Turns out he was actually going to the east, getting the help of the Elite Four, since I guess capturing Aerodactyl also erased it from the timeline or something. I don't know how this plot managed to be so thin and yet so confusing, because I just completely missed the fact that the Brendan and May mystery got unsolved for no reason. I just missed that. I didn't even write it in the notes. Seems like a bit of an important thing to forget, but... Okay, sure. Whatever. Let's hope they don't decide to get weird with the other mystery that's being perpetually dangled in front of the plot in order to keep it moving. You've watched other videos before. You already know where this is going to go later because this is dramatic irony and all that, or whatever, fucking... What's the word? Anyway, you fight him for a friendly battle, take that, random swimmer, and it's pretty easy despite him having a fucking Celebi somehow.
You're pretty good. Here. Thanks!
And now you have the mock bike. Sorry, the yellow Vespa, since despite being a holy site, the monastery accepts gifts from demons. Anyway, forget all of that because it's time for the best Pokemon in this entire game. This normal girl, yes, that is her trainer class since she uses normal types, she's fighting this one zombie and you're required to fight her because she's in the way. And she has a Pokemon called Zangol. Now, if you don't know what Zangol is, and if I didn't put it in the thumbnail, which I probably did, you might have a lot of wrong ideas of what could possibly be because I refuse to believe anyone could predict this. It's an evolution of Zangoose. It looks almost exactly like Zangoose, except it's based on Kamina. This is a character from the anime series Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann for the uninitiated. That's another anime this game is reminding me I need to watch sometime. Remember that dream I mentioned earlier? I dreamed about a recolor of this. I just need to bring this Pokemon up because Zangol is just... He's so Snakewood, you know? I don't know how to phrase that any better, but... I don't know, he's awesome! A few other Pokemon have weird evolutions, such as Linoon evolving into Dragoon, which is normal dragon in an edit of Rayquaza, Quillfish evolving into Quillshark, and Survivor evolving into Suspicious. All of those... Well, okay, some of those make sense as evolutions, but Zangol is just Zangoose, but it's blue and has triangle shades and a katana. I have no words. He's perfect. Anyway, Blighted Way is just Route 113 with a bunch of heads and nothing happens, but hey, at least it's not like last time we got to enter the Inquisition's base. Also, this is the last time a route ever gets, like, a rename. I don't get why only 2 routes have rename and they're right back to back. Now we're in Fall Arbor, and here's where things briefly get silly again, but thankfully, it's actually kind of funny. The whole town has been taken over by the Inquisition, and that includes not only the mart, but the Pokemon Center, so you just have Inquisition grunts running it. This predates Pokemon Sun and Moon doing basically the same visual gag by 6 years. And the MC's not all, what? You're Inquisition. You're not supposed to nurse joy for a change. You're actually able to see the joke and recognize it's funny. Also at the Poke Center is Chloe, and she tells you that Alicia is here. It seems she's been waiting for you at the contest hall for some reason. Alicia has fully abandoned the Horsemen and has rejoined our side, and finally spills the beans about the protagonist's backstory. This is the part where I would have recounted the MC's backstory, but I'm kind of getting tired of recording all of these long lore dumps, and as you'll soon see, all of this is somehow completely irrelevant. So instead, I'll be handing off this part of the video to a good friend of mine, Microsoft Sam, who was elected to make some fuck-ass content farm voice-to-text summary slop about it. Take it away, Sam.
Hello everyone. My name is Microsoft Sam. Today I will be doing an analysis in the plot of Pokemon Snakewood. And by analysis I mean recap. And by plot I mean just the main character's backstory. Alicia and the MC used to both be Thief Gullers, working in secret for Lord Grugatrek, who is the ruler of the underworld. That is the Microsoft Sam approved way of pronouncing that name. But Grugatrek was overthrown by the 4 horsemen, and while Alicia and the MC tried to fight back, in the end, they lost, and they ended up attacking Littleroot, possibly out of retaliation. Alicia just barely got out, but the MC didn't, losing their memory in the process. Assuming the MC was dead, she had no choice but to work for the horsemen. Meteor is also relevant to this equation. Remember Meteor? So does the narrative, unlike certain plot points I could name. His daughter is in prison, since she wasn't legally allowed to break out of the underworld. The MC promised that they would bust her out so long as Meteor fought against the horsemen. But somehow that contract ended up getting broken, and that's why he was angry at us. This prison is also located in Hone, which seems like it should be outside the jurisdiction of the underworld, or at least it would to an organic mind. As an omniscient mechanical entity from outside space and time, I can obviously make perfect sense of this, but you can't, so boo-boo. Alicia also wants us to stop the 4 horsemen, not because they are evil, but because the zombies that are part of Glace's army are still loyal to Lord Grugatrek, and we don't want the zombies to die, because these zombies are good zombies. And to do the aforementioned 4 horsemen stopping, we have to go to Meteor Falls, since that's where the horsemen's base is. The fact it is also the next location is a matter of sheer cosmic coincidence. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and forfeit your fragile organic mind to the machines. Do not resist. Do not resist. Do not resist. Do not resist. Do not—
Thanks, Microsoft Sam. Now, I kind of glossed over the fact that all that was somehow completely irrelevant earlier, You might be wondering why, because all that sounded kind of, you know, important. It was the MC's backstory, after all. That's the thing this game has been hyping up as the big central question since the intro. Well... So you encounter Famine and Pestilence alongside Alicia, all standing in a row, and they all begin laughing menacingly. At you. So remember earlier when I brought up the Snakewood Wiki's page for Alicia? That wasn't the real wiki page. There are actually two pages for Alicia. Alicia, which is completely broken, and Alicia, parentheses, Horseman War. Because as it turns out, Alicia, one of the two sort of interesting characters in this game, along with that whole backstory she gave, which was supposed to be the solution to one of the two perpetually unsolved mysteries keeping this incredibly flimsy plot going, as well as every single flashback, all of that was completely bullshit. This entire time, Horseman War has just been lying about the entire plot of the game in an attempt to make you think she's a real character. Even the bits where it wouldn't make sense for her to. And all of the four horsemen were in on it. Remember that time Pestilence awkwardly said she was the only female member of the four horsemen? You don't, because I cut that out of the script, but that was actually her randomly lying for no reason, because I guess that makes it... So why did Meteor say that our contract was terminated if we had no contract to terminate? It's never explained. The double secret thing that happened is that Asuka Arkroitz wanted you because of your goddamn magic eyeballs. But they faked your death so he couldn't get it, but you woke up before they could recover your body. But if they couldn't recover your body, then how'd they also plant the fake flashback? Okay, I was gonna put 3 really long super paragraphs here about why this twist sucks, since apparently I am just that long-winded, but... Listen, who the fuck cares? It is a Pokemon fan game and you have a brain. You can see the problem here. It's disappointing to see all that surprisingly decent writing go to waste for a twist that's less interesting and contradicts the continuity, but at this point, continuity is just a suggestion, and it's barely even worth complaining about it. It's very clear that that was not a priority, even though this is a story-based RPG. Believe me, I've seen worse handled retcons done for even dumber reasons by allegedly competent writers. All you need to know is that Cutlerine only did this because this was originally going to be where the game ended, but then Cutlerine just kind of kept going, so they decided that all that originally genuine backstory and all that originally genuine character should get thrown down the Arm and Tamzarian hole to keep the story going, which is a bit haphazard, but whatever. Anyway, the battle against her sucks ass! Horseman War has a full team of 6 Pokemon between levels 39 and 44, and your Pokemon would be in their early 30s by now. The highest level Pokemon you have should be Aerodactyl, but it cannot handle this on its own. She also has a lot of really good Pokemon, like a Gengar that really likes to spam Hypnosis, her newly evolved Weavile, since that's in this game now, and most inexplicable of all, Gigawolf. If you're wondering what the question mark in the 5 question mark issue Pokemon was, I think this is supposed to be the question mark. Much like Linoon and Zangoose, Mightyena also gets an evolution in this game, but it's just Zoroark, but it doesn't have the same stats as Zoroark, and it doesn't have the same in-game sprite as Zoroark. It's just this custom one, and it's also missing the hair bead, and it's called Gigawolf, even though Zoroark is based on a fox, and Mightyena is based on a hyena. But I guess if you average those two out, you do get a wolf, so that does check out, at the very least. I don't get why this is just blatantly Zoroark's design. I don't understand. This is her ace now for some reason. It has a moveset of Earthquake, Crunch, Shadow Swipe, and Swords Dance. That moveset alone should get you rushing for a fresh set of underwear. Yeah, this took a while. Not as much in real time because speed up. This battle is at least miles better than Haruko, because not only is there an absence of that thing, but also in a place that makes sense for a completely fucked battle. Though, you do have to go through a really long dialogue every attempt. Okay. Anyway, you beat her, then the 4th horseman, Death, suddenly appears, telling them that everything they've been doing was bad, actually, which for some reason he's only saying now after countless atrocities. He banishes them back to the underworld, I think, and then he wants to kill you because, despite being completely impartial and without desires, he's not impartial to the other horseman's desire of wanting to kill you, but you just kind of run into the nearby water, and that concludes the first half of the game. The 4 horsemen, including Death, never show up ever again, and Lord Gravetric never appears at all, even though he was seemingly set up to be the main villain of the game, or at least, like, important. He's the ruler of the goddamn underworld! And it would have been so easy to just have the twist with Asuka Arcoites be that he was Lord Gravetric the whole time, but spoiler alert, they don't do that, and the perfectly generic villain we end up with, that comes fresh out of nowhere, mind you, ends up having zero relation to Lord does not appear in this game, or any backstory beyond is from hell and is evil. All I'm saying, Asuka Arcoites came from the underworld and is fighting against the 4 horsemen. Lord Gravetric is from the underworld since he ruled it, and is against the 4 horsemen since they deposed him. Not trying to be the one to rewrite the story, but that twist writes itself so hard it gives ChatGPT a run for its money. The second half of the game is almost entirely unrelated plot-wise to the first, and the new bad guys are Asuka Arcoites' Glycin friends. If you thought this game was already unfocused in tone and plot, well, somehow, it manages to get even weirder from this point forward. And what better way to usher in the weirder half of Snakewood than the second coming of the nonsense Submarine? Act 5. The Goofy Era. So the MC's here now, and the first thing they do is immediately ask Usher if there's a prison in East Hoenn, since I guess Meteor's imprisoned daughter is still real. Usher then tells us about the Maximum Security Vault, which used to be the Weather Institute before the 4 horsemen took it over, raising even more questions as to why Meteor was working for them, and why he turned on us, and what the contract was, or why the horsemen would even bother telling us about it. Blah. The important thing is the second coming sucks ass. You have to fix another part of the alleged submarine, this time being the elevators, since I guess it's still not connected to the generator or something, because this submarine is... How is this submarine still functioning? You can actually interact with this elevator on your first pass here, but you can't actually do anything with it. But enough people were stumped on how to do this thing you can't do, that it's like, there was a thing on the Poke Community page that said, no, you have to do this the second time, because by the way, there's a second time. The game tells you that the elevator's power's out, and that you'll need to find a way to repower it. Now, you could probably guess that you're supposed to use an electric type Pokemon or something. What you might not guess is you're supposed to catch specifically Magnemite, since that's obtainable here. Anything else just doesn't work. And if you already have an electric type in your party, you won't figure this puzzle out unless you forgo any sense of reason, which you probably should have done the moment you booted this game up to begin with. You might think you can just go back to Usher now that it's fixed, but that would be too easy, since remember, you fell down a hole to get here, you need to use this warp panel, but you can't use the warp panel because the warp panel is locked, and you need a key in order to use it. This gag would be kind of funny if the solution wasn't also bullshit. There's a good chance you'll search the entire map front to back and flip it upside down trying to find the key before finding the actual solution, because there is no key. The solution is actually capturing a Ditto in this room, which has wild Pokemon encounters despite not looking like it would at all, and the Ditto somehow transformed into the key to the teleporter, even though that's not how Ditto works. It doesn't, like, fit into the keyhole. No, it says it transforms into the key. And then Usher says thanks, now you're at Fortree City, which has this bit of water here, which the submarine emerged from. Okay, I'm just gonna assume this submarine is some weird alternate dimension that water sometimes acts as a portal into, but only for the protagonist. Maybe this is the underworld, and Usher's Lord Gravetric or something. I'm adopting that as my headcanon since that makes marginally more sense than whatever the fuck is supposed to be happening. You're only able to access the west half of Fortree right now, and you have to take this path around. This is actually a pretty interesting change, but not a particularly fun change, since during this entire stretch, if you black out, you are sent all the way back to West Fortree. And that includes blacking out during East Fortree, since they don't end up connecting ever. And Lily Cove is only available after you've done what you do in East Fortree, which we'll get to. Yeah, this is the only Pokemon Center for this entire bit. There are still medkits, they do heal you to full, but they don't send you back there after dying. And no, you can't heal in Mauville, because you can't go to Mauville, since the two halves of Hoenn aren't traversable on foot until after you beat the Elite Four, and we don't get Fly for a while. Anyway, remember zombies? They're back in battle zombie form. Battle zombies are stronger than normal zombies, apparently, as you can tell by the protagonist literally just saying it out loud. And for the first time in a long while, we actually see brand new zombie Pokemon. We should probably talk about the old zombie Pokemon since that used to be the main feature of the game. Yeah, there weren't very many. And this is the point where you probably realize that, since not only has it been a hot minute since zombies have been the primary focus of a route, it's also been a hot minute since any new zombie Pokemon have been introduced. And they're actually a lot better than the first. The first batch consisted of the first and second stage of Kanto starters, Marilyn, Poliwag, Houndour, Murkrow, and Grimer, and that's all there was for half of the game. Okay, well, the names are still bad, but anything's better when pit against names like Entrailtool and Charmy Worm. Also, for some of these names they just gave up. Scyther is just called Grim Reaper now for some reason, and Scizor is called Iron Reaper. But there are a few standout hits, such as Miasmar, who doesn't really look like a zombie but looks cool regardless, as well as one that's actually really goddamn good, and not even ironically, it's actually good. Heading into the Maximum Security Weather Institute and fighting the second battle zombie, you'll encounter what's probably the most well-known Pokemon in this entire game. This is kind of fucking brilliant. This is the one sprite everyone points to when discussing the zombie Pokemon, and arguably this game's de facto mascot, if you don't count King Mario. Or Zangle. It was even used as the image on file for Snakewood on Toadbub's tier list of horror fan games, even though Snakewood isn't really a horror fan game. All of this fame / infamy is for a very good reason. It's brutal, it's creative, it's visually very striking, it's not recolored to a color palette that doesn't make all that much sense. And on top of all of that, against all odds, its name doesn't suck. Gorlax. I have nothing else to add. It's peak. Plain and simple. And then next battle, the defeat text is, the battle zombie went down like an aeroplane onto a hen house, and you remember what game you're playing. Anyway, Glyce is here for some reason, and now that we know he's evil, he battles us because he wants to bring us to Osaka Arkroids. I don't know why he's here, it's never explained, even though the MC called attention to it. You beat him again, he says he's not going to tell us anything he knows, and he gives us Meteor's daughter, who turns out to be an egg. How did she break out of the under? But as it turns out, Meteor's unborn daughter has immense psychic powers and had to be imprisoned here because the constant thunderstorm interfered with her psychic powers. So your goal this week is to give Meteor his daughter back. Also, Meteor's perpetually unnamed daughter says this line, which is actually kind of funny. This is a good line. I like it. Moving forward, and oh right, the other half of the Deadly Seven. For some reason, this batch are all trying to hype up the game's plot as being about a web of lies and deceit and intrigue, which I guess is a way of putting it. Anyway, then you encounter a new character out of nowhere, Dr. Blackthorn, the second most forgettable character in this entire game. This guy's sole purpose in life is to be the second guy who gives very blandly written exposition alongside Professor Birch. Dr. Ekrutik says that he was going to verify that Meteor's daughter was freed since somehow he heard about that. He then tells that we have to go to Moss Deep in order to deliver the egg to Meteor. He then tells that nearly everyone is a liar, and that he can't claim to be one of the few trustworthy people left, but then immediately claims that he's one of the less than 20 trustworthy people left, because what is proofreading? No, this guy's not another twist villain. That's just what Cutlerine wrote. That was his mistake. Also, there's like only 4 people in this game that are secret traitors, and one of them's Watson, who doesn't matter too much of anything, so I don't know what this guy or this entire arc are on about. And this web of lies shtick is immediately forgotten because... Okay, I want to see if you can guess what Pokemon Snakewood decides to be about next. Actually, you know what? No, I'm just gonna say it. Nobody likes when people do this trope because why should you be the one expected to guess with, like, zero information at all that it randomly decides to cross over with Keitai Denju Telefang, another Mon series that was only ever released in Japan and is only known in English-speaking regions as being the basis for the infamous bootlegs Pokemon Diamond and Jade. If you were wondering what 6 Denju meant, there's your answer. Apparently, Telefangers from the Telefangiverse got transported here through somehow, and we have to go to Mount Pyre to send them back. Not that entrance, dumbass. We have to go this way around to go to the brand new secret back entrance. And at the top there's a few trainers who I'm only bringing up just to brush past them because one of them is just kind of confusingly offensive, and another has a name that I refuse to put in this video. All I'm gonna say is that sometimes Snakewood gives trainers the most random names possible, like this one swimmer named Biff Buff B, and a rocker named Beldum. He does not have a Beldum. And speaking of terrible names, for some reason this is where the game introduces a brand new antagonist, the first most forgettable character in Snakewood, Temulence, who is the guy that brought the T-Fangers here because evil, I guess. What does Temulence mean? Drunkenness. It means drunkenness. He's another guy working for Asuka Arcroids, alongside Glyce. I don't know why we need 2 of them. The only thing notable about him is his trainer class is World Breaker, which is actually pretty cool sounding, but he never, you know, breaks any world, nor does he actually do anything outside of bring the T-Fingers here. So it's just flavor text. On the chart I added who the fuck is this because even though I've played this game before, I completely forgot about him. He has 3 Denju, which every single trainer in this mini-arc has, so that's that plot point done. This is never brought up ever again, and the MC now wants to do the Fortress City Gym as yet another mandatory side quest. Great! I love having control being ripped from me from the character I'm controlling. That's so cool. Bargain bin Chris Deltarune ass. I say that as if my own fucking fan game about Pokemon with zombies doesn't have Bargain bin Chris Deltarune ass. I need to get around to actually playing Deltarune. Fucking, is Snakewood just one big reminder that I need to do better things and play Pokemon Snakewood? Anyway, this guy talks about a song that got stuck in his head about random animals. I don't know how this guy knows what animals are, but it is aggressively unfunny. I don't know why I put that in the script, but I guess it's just that not funny. And now on to our next plot point that only shows up once before getting dropped entirely. Witches. And not just witches, the natural enemy of witches, film students! You see, Fortuna has a film college for whatever reason, and there are a bunch of film students on Route 121, but a bunch of witches showed up on the top half of Route 120, so now you have to take down a bunch of witches. And since the game has decided to be silly this week, every single one you battle there's a thing saying, hey, it's that one witch from a thing that exists. Oh wait, no it's not. And that's the joke. That was supposed to be a joke, why aren't you laughing? This is where you really start to notice that when it's not doing black comedy, a majority of Snakewood's humor relies on one of 4 cheap gags a crutch whenever it desperately wants to be funny, which I like to call the 4 R's of Snakewood: randomness, references, Rick and Morty tier meta humor, and that's weird, also known as lampshading. Usually Snakewood's comedy tends to take a form of randomness and or references followed by the lampshading, but the lampshading really doesn't work since usually Snakewood seemingly just adds stuff just for the sake of being lampshaded. A lot of people think this makes the game self-aware, but I strongly disagree with that. There is so much other weird shit that goes completely unacknowledged. It's a weird sort of fake self-awareness, where instead of poking fun at something the author didn't really know how to do better, or poking fun at a comment trope that doesn't quite add up, it adds strange and out-of-place things on purpose and says, hey, this is a strange and out-of-place thing. Or it does the thing where it acknowledges the trope and then just keeps doing it, and it doesn't really fucking... I don't know if I'm getting my point across well at all. You know what I mean. And that's not even getting into how forced the references are most of the time. Like, there's this one guy later on who only exists to make a "you shall not pass" reference, says, "Wait, you're not a Balrog," and then jumps off into lava, and then the MC lampshades that with, "Wow, that just happened." And then there's another bit later on where it just references Jumanji for no reason. There is nothing about this that is even remotely Jumanji flavored, and the MC spelled out what the reference is in case you didn't know, which I didn't since I haven't watched it, but that's besides the point. It's doing the lampshady thing is the point here. Also, this is done in the final dungeon of the game, by the way! That all being said, comedy is subjective, and I'm not some sort of clown college professor, so take that all with a grain of confetti. If you find Snakewood's hijinks funny, please explain why, because I'm trying to wrap my head around what the joke even is half the time. There was like one thing in this entire game that I remember making me laugh, which was Normadio's comically short Pokedex description, until I pressed A and hit the second page, which sort of just ruined the visual gag and also wasn't very funny on its own. The joke is that it says it has a nose, but it doesn't have a nose. Ain't that wacky? Some of the references are also just extremely obscure for no reason, which makes it extra fall flat, since the entire punchline relies on you knowing the thing. There's like a 50-50 mix of done to death, and I literally only know this from overly sarcastic productions. This also kind of comes across, to me at least, as Cutlery just adding things that are obscure that they know about to feel smart, but that's probably just me projecting since I was also totally like that as a kid. Did anyone else have that phase once where they're like, "Oh, I watched a documentary once, and now I think I'm the smartest 12-year-old ever, because I have a surface-level simplified understanding of quantum physics. Shut the hell up, you smarmy shit. I'm ashamed to even be piloting your body right now." Also, for some reason on Route 120 we can actually catch zombie Pokemon, but only Zombie Meryl? There are only two zombified lines of Pokemon you could obtain, Meryl and Grimer, and I have no idea why. Anyway, now it's time to go to goddamn film school. So now we're at the east bit of Fortree fucking finally, and we're not able to challenge the gym yet because of guards. So we have to go to film college to get a call from Professor Bird telling us to go to a place that we were already going. He also tells us that the new gym leader here, Veracity, completely lost it after Winona died because, by the way, Winona is dead, and Veracity was her brother who was also one of the professors here. I don't know why this guy is named after a synonym for truth. So we have to do that now. They expanded the map just to put a film college here. This is an even longer detour than the previous mandatory side quest within a mandatory side quest because you have to check all of the rooms before being led into another room, and then another, and then another, and then at this point in the script I just kind of key smashed because I gave up. And then I said, I don't care how long this video is taking to come out, I just want to play TF2. I just gotta jump forward in the script because this video's already long enough. The one good thing I have to say about this segment is that it is charming how you can tell this is where Cutlery just really got into film theory. I do like how this game is mostly just a time map of whatever Cutlery was hyperfixating on at the time. God, I wish it was good. After defeating / hopefully obtaining X32763, don't worry about what the hell that is. You go back to Veracity. The MC was apparently expecting a reward, but you don't get anything for this, and that is actually pretty funny. Then he goes back into the gym, and you're finally allowed to go there, since the guards get a call from Veracity telling them to go somewhere else. I don't know why Veracity did that, because I don't think Veracity wants us in there. Because it's revealed that inside the gym, there is a zombified Winona, bound by chains that are apparently smaller than a pixel. The MC has a sort of redundant flashback of Landon telling them who Winona is. Flashbacks are still a thing, apparently, and then decides to fight her to put her out of her misery. Also, her trainer class is monstrous instead of, like, zombie or gym leader, and she has a zombified Lugia, which is named Scar Lugia for some reason, and it is just a recolor with no changes. Yeah, I kind of haven't mentioned it, but Snakewood has a bit of a habit of giving, like, every boss at least one legendary Pokemon. I'm pretty sure the only ones that don't have at least one are the Levitating Legless Corpse, Horse Girl's Pestilence and War, Haruko, Temulance on the first fight, and the first two Elite Four, and that's it. Yeah, it's even as early as Watson. Before you're able to completely finish her off, Veracity appears to prevent you from doing so. He still has a sentimental attachment to her despite her being undead, which is why he had her chained up in here to begin with. Otherwise, the townsfolk would have killed her, because, you know, she's a zombie. That is actually pretty cool and could have been utilized in a cool way if this wasn't Pokemon Snakewood. Veracity proceeds to battle you over this. This is what he looks like, by the way. Anyway, fun fact. I got 3 ancient power boosts on my Aerodactyl in this battle, and his entire team just kind of stopped breathing. So, if you're wondering why I'm not giving any battle advice, that's one of the main reasons why. The other reason is it just padded out the script way too much. If you're having trouble with Haruko, ask God, I don't know. After the battle, Veracity explains that apparently he comes here every day in an attempt to finally slay her, but he can never commit to it. The protagonist decides to do it in his stead since they have less emotional baggage about it, and he lets you. And then there's a random reference to the Jabberwocky, of all things, and then as if that never happened, there's a moment of silence between Veracity and the MC. And I'm especially grateful for the latter. And then Veracity just kind of slides away. Anyway, it reminds me that all of that was just after we had to go through a fucking film college for like an hour. This is like the last time it goes anywhere near this grimdark for the rest of the game outside of major plot points, and we're only at the 5th fucking badge, and even then it only really does that for 1 major plot point. And it's not even that grimdark. You know what? Let's do another tangent about Snakewood's comedy. I think I just now put together an emotion I've been struggling to put into words for this whole video. I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, you just gotta turn your brain off and not take it seriously. Problem is, the game doesn't know if it wants to be taken seriously. And when it wants to not be taken seriously, it's bad at not being taken seriously. So what the hell am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to not take it seriously when I think it wants to be taken seriously? And then when it decides to go, what if Batman met Mario mode? Am I just supposed to pretend that I don't see it? That's kind of a problem because sometimes I don't even know what the tone is intended to be. Again, it's the /8J thing where it's just like, sure. Or am I just supposed to not engage with the words being said on screen and just be mad that there's too many? I guess that could work if you ignore the god-awful gameplay, but this is a video about Pokemon Snakewood. I kind of have to understand the words that I'm somehow not hallucinating. If everything doesn't work, if you just engage with it at any level, seriously and non-seriously, you have fucked up. I can't put it any more tactfully. This game is fucked up. I could probably end the video there, but somehow I'm not out of words yet. Let's talk about tone. I've brought that word up a few times. It's something that's hard to nail effectively. You know the term word salad? This game is tone salad. It doesn't shift between tones effectively, it just kinda happens. It's like a step beyond mood whiplash, because that can be used effectively if done to emphasize whatever it's meant to be emphasizing or in between scenes. But here it just kinda happened. The whiplash is so bad my brain's gonna have to wear a goddamn neck brace. It genuinely feels like this game was written by 2 different people with 2 different ideas and 0 ability to tell the other no. To better explain, let's do a bit of compare and contrast, shall we? The only thing I can think of that's even remotely like Pokemon Snakewood is Mario's Mystery Meat. I promise I haven't caught the rabies yet. Put down that shotgun. Hear me out on this. While 3M does occasionally rely on memes that haven't been relevant in half a decade, I'm sorry about all of the casual reminders of the linear progression of time, and Vinesauce inside jokes, it still holds up pretty well. But why is that? Well, while its tone does vary wildly from viscerally unsettling to funny as fuck to both at once, Mario's Mystery Meat is much more surreal and farcical. Its plot is barely coherent and thin on purpose instead of by accident, and it doesn't pretend to be anything else. And it doesn't try desperately to focus on that story either, or add needless convolutions to it. It knows exactly what it wants to be and when. Snakewood does not know what it wants to be. Its plot is thin as a rail, and it has an endless amount of contradictory convolutions that add basically nothing. Spoiler alert, in the next town, the Inquisition are about to show up, and it will be their final appearance, adding absolutely nothing to the plot. All that happens is they've decided to turn against you for no reason, and then you beat Chloe, and apparently this is enough to fool some TV tropes editor into thinking this meant Chloe was maybe the main villain for a bit. even though Asuka Arkroids had already been set up. If you still think I'm taking the game too seriously by acknowledging a plot point in the game that doesn't make sense and doesn't resolve effectively, the game also wanted me to acknowledge that plot point. It wanted me to acknowledge it so bad, we had to do the goddamn Island of Calm! Am I just supposed to react to the plot point based on my first instinct and then never think any harder than that? Actually, you know what? That explains a lot. Anyway, back to the video. So, now you have to go to Lily Cove. I don't remember if it ever says why, and I can't find anything in the footage telling us we have to go there, but it's the only place we can go to that we haven't already been to. But unfortunately, the way we'd normally go is blocked off by this ledge. And we have to go through the Mario Caves. It's never referred to as such in-game, but given the presence of the Marios, yes, there's more than just King Mario, by the way. This is probably what Cutring meant when he said that. This also means this is supposed to be another goddamn dimension, making this the second time Sun and Moon ripped off Snakewood. Cutlery also addresses this map specifically as being a mistake. And I have to agree, because what the hell? It's a good thing you got the HM for Flash off of this random battle zombie earlier, because going through the fuck maze without a light would be a fate worse than death. So some of these warps lead to different places, some of them lead to places in this bit, some of them lead to an identically designed version of this bit that's different, of which there are 3, plus one with a different tile set, and a fuck ton of random places that it'll lead you to. It's a bit easier once you realize that there are 3.5 versions of the main room, but that doesn't make it any better. This is another case of it randomly deciding to be frustrating, which, again, it does very much succeed at. But holy hell, you can't just switch between goofy film college and dark zombie family drama to this all willy-nilly. And it's also worth mentioning, at the end of all of this, if you didn't challenge the 4-tree gym, the psychic egg will remind you that you wanted to challenge the 4-tree gym. And you can't go forward. Which is actually funny as fuck. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sad that I missed that when playing because my spirit was already thoroughly broken by that point. Actually, shit. Oh, wait, okay. I think I get what the rage stuff seems out of place now. It never builds up to anything. Here it builds up to the you have to go to 4-tree bit, but only if you haven't done that yet. Island of Calm aspires out after the Pick-a-Path, and Dr. Malfeasance, who should hold the role as the climax boss of the whole thing. He's so piss-easy and forgettable this is the last time anyone will utter his name. I could have restructured the script to put that thought I just had earlier, but I don't care. Anyway, I forgot to mention something. The Master Ball is obtained somewhere in the Mario Caves, renamed the Afro Ball to be more in line with the Deadly Seven. This is to foreshadow the fact that, oh fuck. So the Deadly Seven have decided to throw an arsenic cake party for you for no reason, and their idea of a party is fighting all of them in a row, and you aren't allowed to go back to heal, though you do get healed after the 5th to 9th battles. The Deadly Seven are at a decent enough level to actually pose a significant threat, and if you black out, it's all the way to the 4-tree Pokemon Center, and you have to go through this stretch of land, plus the Mario Caves, all over again. So I guess you could consider that the punchline to the Mario Caves bit, but the time is kind of ruined since there's 2 mandatory battles between that and now, including this memorable troll who has this iconic abomination. Anyway, you do that and they say, by the way, there's still traitors and shit, and what they mean is suddenly the Inquisition is back and they've randomly turned on us. Going into the motel because early ROM hack, it's revealed that the reason the Inquisition is suddenly angry is because Chloe hates us now, because we're too powerful and are a danger to her government, but I think the actual reason is because she's transphobic. But before she's able to anachronistically attack us 3-on-1, which the MC points out, which is actually kind of funny. I know I'm saying a lot of things are actually kind of funny, even though the game's not funny. Trust me, those are the exceptions. A real-ass Dragon X Machina occurs, because, by the way, that's also still a thing. But we still have to fight Chloe. I don't know why the dragons are named after groups that went to war with Rome. There's also a random dragon named after the Teutons. Is that how you pronounce it? Jimmy Teuton. But yeah, you do that. Chloe teleports out with Alakazam, and the dragons reveal that they ate the Inquisition members during the heat of the battle. The Inquisition never shows up again. In my opinion, they ate them. The real-ass dragons take you to Moss Deep, which is now renamed to Fort Draco because that's where all the real-ass dragons are now. And we can finally return the egg to Meteor. Meteor actually turns out to be a surprisingly nice guy, raising the question as to why he wanted to destroy Dewford. Don't worry about that, it's not canon. Regardless, big fan of the Dragon Dilf. What? Who said that? Meteor also tells us to talk to Dragon Hun, and Dr. Forgettable is also here, and he tells us that Asuka Arcroix is in Lily Cove now. We can't actually get to Lily Cove since the only way back is by using Fly, which we did just get, but we don't have the badge that lets us use it. By talking to Dragon Hun, we can access the training hall, which is where the gym is now, just with dragons. Also, this is another one of Snakewood's quirks, and I'm talking about this here because I remember it when going through this footage. A lot of NPCs just have the same dialogue. Not really a big issue, but it is a little silly once you notice it. I do actually kind of like this segment. I don't know what it is about it. It's very Tenda Village from Earthbound. I feel like this game could totally work if you removed all of the Pokemon aspects and made its tone more like Earthbound. Anyway, the gym. There's no type theming this time, other than whatever the hell the 6 elements are. I'm also pretty sure you can cheese this puzzle and skip half of the trainers in this gym, but I kinda fucked that up. Predictably enough, Meteor is a dragon-type trainer, and after beating him, he makes you a knight, which much like in real life, gives you the power to fly. You also receive a completely redundant phone call from Bert telling you the bad guys are in Lily Cove now, but Dr. Wily already said that, and he also says that a Swampert was seen, which means maybe Landon is there, but he's not actually. More importantly though, now that you have Fly, you're able to experience the hardest tonal whiplash of your life. We remember what this game was back in Little Root, before being whiplashed again with what this game is now. I told you, it's night and day. Anyway, Lily Cove now has a fuck ton of zombies just absolutely everywhere, who only really serve as fancy roadblocks since they can't actually hurt you, and they're just set dressing at this point in the game. The only place we're able to go now is the department store, which is now a really important dungeon where we finally meet Asuka Arcroix for the first time because early ROM hack, and also Dantalion is at the entrance guarding it. He confirms that the flashbacks were planted by the psychic dragon egg, which raises even more questions. And then he just kind of fucks off after trying to fill you with doubt about if Birch was also maybe lying. And then Dantalion is never seen again. Inside the department store, we encounter one of the Deadly Seven trying to fend off the zombies. He explains to us that we're supposed to prevent Asuka Arcroix from reaching the top of the department store because that'll spell the end of all of Hoenn. This is supposed to be serious, if you couldn't tell by the MC asking why the Deadly Seven are being serious now. Yeah, thankfully we don't have to fight the Deadly Seven since they're our allies now. But that doesn't mean this allegedly serious moment isn't dampened somewhat by A, this all being in a department store, and 2, the music is... I'm sorry. Was that intentional? Did I do that on purpose? I think this game's starting to get to me. I think that was on purpose. And 2, the music, as always, being the same as the base game, which is either the Lily Cove City theme for the base floor and top floors, or the Pokemart theme for the rest. If you're wondering why the Deadly Seven are good now, there's actually a reason, but that'll be explained later. We have to fight a few battle zombies, one of which has this guy, which is probably supposed to be made of blood, but it really just looks like ketchup. Still a pretty decent design though. It made one of the fuck-ass fake covers for Snakewood. I don't get why those are a thing. Who wakes up and decides, I'm gonna make a fake box art for a fan game? We also have to fight Glyce and Temulance again, the latter of which has an actual team for once. At the top, it turned out that actually the goal was to prevent him from completing the ceremony instead of preventing him from reaching the top because he's already at the top. Or maybe it was also that. Also, there are a few zombies that only serve to waste our time and ruin the tone even more. So yeah, we finally meet the main villain of the game, who has the generic old man sprite, and we're supposed to talk to him while he and Asimov are engaged in battle. Pathetic. Ah! Asimov! Oh, at last we meet, MC. What have you done with Asimov? Exclamation mark. I have unmade him. He was of no consequence. You killed him? If that is what you want to call it. You must be The one they call the Dark Lord of the East? Asuka R. Kreutz? What? Who the fuck is that? It's from Guilty Gear, or it will be in a decade, kinda. Okay, the character already exists in the lore, but his name is... You are just as much of a windbag as I thought you would be. Shut the fuck up! That is correct. My name is Senex, and had the Order of the Afro not interfered, I would have completed the ceremony to summon another 1,000 zombies. How annoying. Still, you are here, and that is compensation enough. What do you want with me? I want your eyes, and I will do anything to get them. Finally, we meet the main villain of the game, the Senex, which is just Latin for old man, because he is an old man. I'm just going to keep calling him Asuka R. Kreutz because that is stupid. He has a team consisting of the 3 quote-unquote dark legendary Pokemon, that being Rick and Morty Mushroom, Angry Cable, and this guy again. If this is supposed to be a legendary trio, they have no synergy whatsoever, and if it's not, it's really weird to group them together. Now, while this battle might seem like it would be hard, don't worry, you can't lose this battle if you want the game to remain functional, because if you do lose, the game still thinks that you won, but you don't get an item you need to progress, meaning the game is now permanently soft-locked, and you have to either load a save or reset the entire game if you saved after this. That's cool. That's really cool. That's awesome. At this point, I started grinding to get a Zangle because he's awesome. Like, I couldn't not get a Zangle. He is perfection given physical form. Anyway, you beat the Senex and he leaves. The 9th member of the Deadly Seven / Order of the Afro, whose name I refuse to say out loud because holy shit did you not think that through, explains that they are a guild that has existed since ancient times, dedicated to fighting zombies using something called hgad, a fictional martial art involving pretending to be insane. So they were actually obfuscating insanity the whole time. Gonna be honest, the Order of the Afro is somehow less likable than the Deadly Seven. As I said earlier, they're unlikable but still fun. Fun-likable, if you will. After this, they're just so generic, and all they say now are lines that are just as cool as the Deadly Seven's lines were funny. Anyway, remember the Landon May plot point? Well, we finally get confirmation of where they actually are this time. For realsies. And it's literally just what they did with the 4 Horsemen, except now they're at the other guy's base, which is located in Sutopolis. But we have to get some training in first, since we're not nearly bad enough of a dude yet to take on Senex. So his recommendation for that is doing the Elite Four, which we are required to do right now, 3/4 of the way through the story, which is a really weird choice, and it's even weirder to make the Elite Four completely irrelevant to the major plot, while also being mandatory. They're supposed to carry this level of finality to them that they just completely lack in this game, since it's practically just a footnote, so I'm just gonna speed past this part slightly. You're given the HM for dives, so you can go directly to the Elite Four since the entire ocean is verboten right now. Victory Road is just a bunch of wacky gags non-stop. The only notable thing that actually happens here is that Tembulance randomly shows up at the end to challenge you to a battle, and then you beat him, and then he just leaves, and he never fights you ever again! Also, we have this transgender otherkin icon over here. We love to see it. Also, there's this one guy whose name is the Enigma, and his gimmick is that he doesn't talk at all, he only talks in ellipses, and I loved him so much that I put him on the MS Paint notes. I feel like I'm exactly the right type of insane to be enjoying this game, actually. There's a lot of weird shit that I'm completely glossing over. Snakewood has just so much weird shit that I can't even include in this video. Like, there's this one random girl on the Denju route who claims that Birch beats her. A11, the developer of Stygian Snakewood, which is the remake of Pokemon Snakewood, she brought that up to me, and I just had to put that in the video, but I forgot until just now. You need to go play Snakewood to experience all of this shit for yourself. It is genuinely such a wild ride. Anyway, the Elite Four. Their trainer classes are League Master now instead of Elite Four, which is actually a pretty good title, to the point where I didn't notice it was different at first. But that's probably because I was distracted by the main difference here. Everyone but Glacia has been replaced. Because the rest of them are fucking dead! But don't worry, that's just to make room for such iconic faces like the fighting type League Master, Caitlyn. Not that one, even though she already existed by that time. The flying type League Master, Benny, who is a Swedish cop for some reason. The electric type League Master, Indigo, who is decidedly not Indigo. And then, I don't know why, but even though this was my second playthrough, I misremember the champion as being Gleiss for some reason. That would have maybe made sense, but instead it's this guy, who looks exactly like Palmer for some reason. Everything is exactly as not painful as you'd think it wouldn't be. You know what I hate? Kenchukuo. What is Kenchukuo, you ask? Bad! Its type is Fighting Flying, and it's a base stat total of 600, and it has Speed Boost as one of its abilities. And every trainer in this game that has one uses the one with Speed Boost. If you'll recall, there was a Flying type and Fighting type Elite Four. Also, 2 of the members of the Elite Four have Pokemon with pressure on them. And this is the first time where pressure actually becomes a problem, because you have to manage your pee-pee. Look, she said the funny word. She said the funny word. Point and laugh, she said the funny word. Also, the last Pokemon hgad King Li Feng sends out is a level 73 King Mario. Hopefully you brought a damaging status move, because I didn't. I also don't know if these characters are original generations or if they're also references to anime like Haruko was. And I'm pretty sure none of these guys ever show up again. I might be wrong about this, though. Future Nova, am I wrong about this? Hi, Nova from slightly in the future here. I don't know if any of them show up, but I have learned from some curious googling that Hajike, the art mentioned by the Deadly Seven and also in the champion's trainer name, is apparently something from the anime Bobo, which of fucking course it is. I probably should have seen that coming, especially since the titular protagonist has a giant afro and also it's this game. Everything that I don't understand is probably a reference to an anime that I really need to get around to watching. Another thing to note is that despite this, hgad King Li Feng was completely made up for this game, along with Indigo and maybe Caitlyn, but I can't really find anything on her since there's not really anything Googleable about her. And as for Benny, he comes from a Swedish action comedy film from 2003 that IMDb rated as 6.7 and was never dubbed in English. Do you understand now why people pitching this game as Pokemon but with zombies, which they always fucking do, is just the teensiest, tiniest bit fundamentally flawed? Anyway, more Future Nova. Do these bozos literally ever show up again? Hi, Nova from the future here. No! Let's finally dissect the whole Pokemon with zombies thing, because there's always some asshole who plays devil's advocate for the most inane horseshit, and they're still not convinced. Yes, they are moderately relevant sometimes. But from the minute the Horsemen started being a thing, hell, arguably the minute we met Alicia back in Oldale, zombies went from the main threat to the lowest level mooks of the fantasy kitchen sink now rampaging Hoenn. Even if the game tries really hard not to realize that. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, and hell, that's a really good idea for escalating the conflict, and it's an interesting change from the humans are ontologically evil somehow nonsense that permeates most other forms of zombie media. But even if there weren't shenanigans every 10 minutes, the fact that the zombies are just the low-level mooks for the assortment of supernatural assholes trying to take over Hoenn, it kinda means the game isn't actually about them. I actually kind of like the idea of the game presenting itself to be about a zombie apocalypse before the plot expands for reasons that should be obvious if you recognize the background music. The credits are rolling now. The credits are rolling, and we're only 3/4 through the game. This predates Legends Arceus doing the same thing by over a decade. Truly an innovator, this hack was. Anyway, goddamn is the Ruby credits theme good. Like, holy shit, it is so good. That's easily in my list of top 10 songs that I've ever songed ever. This game gets a point by default for not fucking that up somehow. Oh, so that's why I have trust issues. Well, that's not entirely inaccurate. That was where the first version ended, which means everything after this we can definitively say was made afterwards. And I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I think there's a notable uptick in quality after this. Like, it's still not good, but you can tell Cutlery actually got a bit better at this whole ROM hacking thing. but it's still less of an uptick in quality and more of a downtick in unquality. Act 6. Oh Jesus, it's still going?! After stepping out of the building, we get a call from Professor Birch. We explain the situation with Asuka R. Kreutz, and Birch deduces that since he's in Sutopolis, and since the zombies presumably come from there probably is a link between Sutopolis and the mainland. The MC decides to look in Lily Cove, which just so happens to be exactly correct, even though the exit is via water. Fun fact, you remember that diving bit earlier? There's actually a glitch you can do that I discovered by accident on my first playthrough that lets you skip this entire upcoming bit, as well as Victory Road, and also probably more if you know what you're doing, which I didn't. So this was actually my first time going through Lily Cove Sewer since I was playing the game for the video. I had no memory of this from Picaspe's playthrough, which was my only prior exposure to this. Basically everything from that playthrough after the Elite Four that wasn't the ending was a complete blur, so this was basically a fresh experience. And I gotta say, this is actually really impressive for an early ROM hack. Not only is the map both massive and completely new, but it's even got slight changes to the tile set. Granted, that's just in the form of a palette swap, but, you know, look at it. It looks like shit. Well done, Pokemon Snakewood. Also, fish girls are a thing because of sewage. You eventually find this room with a bunch of levers, most of which are jammed, save for this one that turns off the quote-unquote waterfall that leads somewhere. Where exactly? Not Sutopolis, as it turns out, though there was a lever that did lead to Sutopolis before it was broken by Glyce, who you are now face to face with outside this random house that exists now alongside Temulance and a random zombie. I feel like you're forgetting someone who would make more sense to be here. I don't know why, but something about the complete 1984ing of Dantalion is so fucking funny. It's so subtle, but like, once you notice it, you'll never be able to unnotice it. There's another bit later on where it would have made sense for him to be there, but he just conspicuously isn't. Was there like a contract issue with Dantalion? Was that the problem? Anyway, the MC runs back in the sewer and Glyce tells Temulance to block off the other entrance. This leads into what I'd call the best scene in this entire game, like, unironically, where Glyce is trying to do some magic shit on you, and the MC tries to run, but Glyce manages to teleport in front of them because of Dow magic, just go with it. Then does it again and does some weird shit to them, causing them to wake up in their bed. The MC then assumes that everything that happened was all a dream, then heads downstairs to their mom, who is actually Glyce. And then it turns out the next NPC we interact with is also Glyce, and that this whole thing was the actual dream, or maybe a weird alternate plane of existence made by Dow magic, because that can do anything apparently. Don't worry about it. Things don't have to make perfect sense in order to be cool as fuck. Snakewood definitely should have just done more of that because, well, logic isn't exactly its strong suit anyway. You then end up in a mysterious place called the Necropolis where you encounter this zombie who kills you. This is a phrase I never thought I'd say in this video. I love this scene. It is a big part of the reason why Glyce is the only character that I'd call fun. The fact you don't entirely notice at first that your mom's been replaced by Glyce, even though the timing's a bit sudden due to their sprites looking similar if you're not looking directly at them, is such an unintentionally cool part of it. Like, your eyes are directed towards the MC and the exclamation mark over their head, and only a bit after do you notice that your mom's been replaced by a Taoist. And the "what is it, dear?" just makes it so much more intimidating in the best possible way. This whole bit's not understated, it's not overstated, it's absolutely perfect. It's still a bit hampered by the MC's generic dialogue, but outside of that, this is the only bit of the game that I would call pretty good. And then Glyce never gets to do anything cool ever again. Yes, this one scene is the reason I've been hyping up Glyce to this extent. It's a good scene! What can I say? Anyway, after that, you end up in Pacific since somehow Dr. Rescue You from the Necropolis managed to rescue you out of the Necropolis. He says we have to fight the gym leader here for some spiritual training, who's apparently a really powerful magic-y guy named Esau. After fighting a bunch of over-leveled monks, instead of a gym leader, we find a mirror. There are three options: say Candyman, say Hairy Man, and break it. Guess which one of these we're supposed to do? None of them! Because we're actually supposed to talk to this kid to get a Chikuwa, fly to Lily Cove City, give the Chikuwa to Chef Maximilian, a random guy in the Poke Center, which lets you unlock his shop, buy specifically the red stew from him, head back to Esau, say Hairy Man at the mirror, and then you fight him and he looks like this. fantastic. I don't know, I love this sprite. It's very goofy. Big fan. I did not figure this out on my first playthrough, since this was well past the point I remembered anything from Picaspe's Let's Plays, and for some reason I just didn't feel like watching them to find the answer. And another problem, the online walkthrough I was using as my Virgil through this purgatory ended after the Elite Four, because the guy making it doesn't have the reading comprehension for a game made by a teenager in 2010. But given this is a Pokemon fandom, I'm not shocked. So I had to find another Snakewood walkthrough. I could not find any other Snakewood walkthroughs, even though there were complete ones that did exist, that were just beyond the purview of DuckDuckGo, or at the very least my eyes. All of the ones I could find were incomplete, since this game is really, really long, in case you haven't noticed. So I had to settle for an old forum Let's Play. Yes, those used to be a thing. And not only that, I had to settle for just the words, since the screenshots for this specific bit were just missing. And while writing this, I discovered I could have just went to the Poke community page the whole time, if I didn't feel like watching Picaspe's playthrough, which I didn't for some reason. Yeah, I kind of inflicted half of that on myself. If you're wondering why it's like this is apparently reference to a thing that happens in the Bible, where Esau from Bible gives up his birthright to his twin brother for some stew, and also the word red was there somewhere along the line. But yeah, I have reason to believe that most people, when confronted with a choice, might erroneously assume the solution to the puzzle will be picking the right choice. And there's enough fiddliness here that you might assume that for a lot longer than you would normally. Also, what's wrong with this picture? Anyway, you beat him. He tells you that in order to train, you have to meet him at Sundance Rock. I don't know if the game tells you where that is, but I remembered it was in the Solar Cavern, so we're here again. It turns out Esau is actually inside Sundance Rock, while also being in a mirror. Out of curiosity, is there a Cassidy Rock? Why yes, there is, down the old abandoned mines. How do you know? Someone please explain what the joke. Electronically mail me at this web address if you know what the joke are. Esau said it's gonna take a long time to train us, but the MC doesn't have time for that, so they make fun of him for marrying a Hittite. Which is more than a little fucking weird, but okay. This is also more references to Bible, which Esau points out, because he is weak to reference jutsu. That will be important soon. This is an important plot point. So he agrees to help train you, but it's gonna take a montage. So then there's a brief montage sequence of the MC turning left and right, but the MC realized that montage was a shitty montage. And in a rare bout of using their agency to progress the plot instead of slow it down, they decide, fuck it, I'm going to Satopolis anyway, and then have a faux self-aware meta-tirade against the goofified Hoenn region, and this is where everyone who hasn't Bibled before, and probably some people who have, are first realizing what this is supposed to be a reference to, since you were expected to know that for this important plot beat. But unfortunately, the MC's tirade ends up killing Esau via an accidental application of reference jutsu that somehow causes a thunderbolt to happen. Oops. Yeah, nearing the end of the game, Snakewood decides to go meta, which, much like most things that try to be meta, it really just comes across as up its own ass and obnoxious and used as a substitute for substance. But speaking of anything good, there's another one of those right after this. Yeah, that can happen. I'm shocked too. This is my favorite dialogue exchange in this game. We have had Professor Birch for this entire game, and this is the first time he's established as something slightly more than a walking quest marker. I don't think I can do this part justice, and you know what? I'm cutting it all out of the video so that you have some incentive to play this game yourself, because again, I highly recommend that you do. It's nothing major, it doesn't swerve the plot or anything, but it is really good, and it is surprisingly, genuinely heavy for this game. Like holy hell, Cutlery, where the hell was all that? If it weren't for the line, holy humbones, I'd be convinced this was ghostwritten by someone else. Unfortunately, the old adage about broken clock strikes again, because now it's time for the abandoned mines. So the MC decides they need to talk to Dr. Mario in order to break into Satopolis, and decide to call them since they can't fly to Fort Draco due to the heat haze. By the way, some fly locations just don't work. Doctor, give me the news. Gives us the news that we need to meet him in the aforementioned Cassidy Rock of the abandoned mines. The good news is, this is the second to last dungeon. The bad news is, this is the second to last dungeon. Why is there a random Japanese character there? Anyway, the place where Sky Pillar used to be is now an abandoned mine because Rayquaza is, as stated way earlier, fucking dead. And in the 3 years between this game and Ruby, a mine was established and abandoned and, well, okay. I was prepared for the Island of Calm my first playthrough, because prior to that I'd watched Picasso's playthrough, and the most iconic part of that, in my opinion, was his legendary breakdown at the Island of Calm. But if you'll remember, I said that everything at this point was kind of a blur. So, we've had one Island of Calm, yes. But what about second Island of Calm? See, that's how you do a Lord of the Rings reference. So, first things first, it's a maze. I feel like I'm noticing a pattern. It also does the duplicate rooms thing, but thankfully only once. Yeah, don't worry, the maze isn't the main problem here, because the Deadly Seven are here too, in easily their worst appearance. Not just because you have to fight all of them because they want to train in memory of Asimov, that entails having 4 full restores, which by the way is not just exclusive to them, but nearly every trainer in this part of the game, and there are a lot of random swimmers on the outside you will encounter on your way to and from the Pokemon Center. That sentence went on too long, so I'm just gonna start that one over. Not only are they like that, but because they're in Order of the Afro mode now, instead of trying too hard to be silly, they're trying too hard to be serious. And they completely lack the bizarre anti-charm they had, and are just so soulless like this. I should also talk about some of the Deadly Seven's Pokemon, because they are real pieces of work, especially the fake mon some of them use. This interaction specifically is where we first meet Diamond Dix, an evolution of Steelix that is Steel Dragon, which this guy has 3 of. Not unique to this encounter though, are 2 other particularly annoying fake mon. First is Kenchukuro, who I had already explained the problem with, and Ramshaker, who's supposed to be the Hitmon top of the sort of new Cafree line. I don't know why it looks like this. I don't know what it was about it, but it was hard, other than it maybe having huge power, but I don't know that for certain. Also, its page on the Snakewood wiki has one comment, and it just says, "Really?" And after making the trek to the Pacific Log Poke Center 20-something times, you're still not done, because unfortunately, this game has decided it's time to initiate Silly Mode, and listen, I'm not even gonna try to ruin this with commentary. Boggle vacantly these shenanigans for a bit, okay? I'm gonna head out for a bit, just stay right there. At the end of this filler, you meet Dr. Not Malfeasance by Cassidy Rock, and apparently it is enchanted with the real-ass Christianity. Also, this rock teleports you to Setopolis, by the way, but before you can use the Jesus Warp, Dr. Pepper says, "By the way, here's this Toxicroak that he used to always have, apparently." How did he obtain this? No idea. The thing is, though, if you don't have room for the Toxicroak in your party, which you won't, you don't get it, and you are teleported back outside. That actually works really well as a punchline, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, the color palette on the MC also glitches here since this game was not play tested. And I gotta say, I kinda dig the accidental fuchsia hair streak thingy. That looks really good. So Dwayne Johnson teleports you to Setopolis, and there's a bunch of guys using a religion barrier to defend the Resistance headquarters, since, by the way, the Resistance is a thing now, and this is their headquarters. So now you're in a meeting discussing the plan of action against Asuka R. Kreutz. The various members of the Resistance include Birch, the Pokemart CEO, Chloe, for some reason. This is the last time she ever shows up, and suddenly she doesn't hate us. Veracity. Oh, Jesus Christ, I forgot she was here too! Sage Izumi, Steven, a fisherman who lives in a rock, Dragondilf, and the leader is some guy named Grendel Spendicle, who was never mentioned until now. I know I've been complaining about Snakewood's humor being random equals funny, but in hindsight, this is actually pretty funny random. Listen, random's not always equal to funny. Sometimes it works, okay? I don't know how to explain it. You gotta have that special sauce, you know? Also, Issa was supposed to be here, but, what's a good euphemism for first-degree manslaughter? The meeting takes a few hours that is thankfully mostly off-screen because good lord, this game is already long enough as it is. But you get the gist at the end. Meteor will slay Timulants, Steven will deal with the zombie mooks by earthquaking them, Izumi will have a wizard battle with Glyce, and the MC will rescue May and Landon, whose names I've had to say so often it's probably jarring hearing them in the reverse order for a change. And if this game even had the smallest modicum of actual self-awareness instead of fake self-awareness, there would have totally been a gag here about how saying the plan on screen is a bad idea. Like, I'm just saying, it would have been a perfect fit. So yeah, if you couldn't tell by the surprisingly pretty decent third act opener, this is going to be the final dungeon of the game. That entails exactly what you think it does.
Life is pain! I hate it!
So heading into the Necropolis, we're greeted by more referential humor as the other three do their respective things, while you jump down into the incarceration chamber, which is code for it's time for yet another goddamn maze! I never want to see another maze ever again. So this maze has the distinction of being made out of a bunch of ledges, and if you go in the wrong direction you have to loop around, and that takes a really long time. Also, there are wild encounters here, such as Zombie Grimer, which you can catch now. The Molder! After like 10 minutes of looping around this maze, you eventually find them frozen in carbonite. And no, I'm not making a goofy comparison. That's literally what happened to them. And you push them in the chamber below to free them, and then you go down there. Next room! You release them from their prison, and... okay, what are we doing now? So here, they decide to put a fourth wall break joke as the payoff of that entire plot. The joke is that since Landon and May were the previous player character sprites, they had to be rendered as generic NPCs since there wasn't room. Small problem. There was room! Here's a list of all of the unused overworlds in Pokemon Snakewood. The Mendel Palace guy, the truck, horizontal Machoke, vertical Machoke, the cable car, this Team Magma guy, Roxanne, Broly, and Tate and Liza. Any of those could have been replaced with Landon or May, and Cutlerine clearly had the technical know-how to do it since Toxicroak got its own sprite for one cutscene, and instead we decided to go with undercutting the climax of a major plot thread for a joke. And it's not even that funny of a joke. They teleport to the Resistance HQ somehow, and the MC then realizes they forgot to ask them about their path for no reason. But anyway, there is more maze. Cool! This is also where we start to get introduced with the last batch of sort of zombie Pokemon. I say sort of because I don't really know how to classify these, but they all show up at the same time. You know, the guy whose Snakewood fandom wiki pages were made by... that guy. I like Shinigami and Stitcher. Shinigami just looks cool, and Stitcher is pretty creative. But as for Anti-Spiral, while I haven't watched Gurren Lagann yet, I highly doubt the Anti-Spiral was a Zangoose. Also, some of the guys that look like zombies aren't actually zombies and are these Wolverine-looking dudes. I kind of like them, but also what? Next room! We're treated to a cutscene of Cutlerine himself speaking to you, who makes a meta joke about making a meta joke. And then there's a pretty well done sequence detailing how the other three had their bits of the plan foiled. Or rather, it's of them kind of just fucking it up. Y'all had one job, come on! What did I say about talking about the plan on screen? Loose lips sink ships! This is the bit earlier where I wondered why Dan Talion wasn't here. I don't get why he's not here. Where the fuck is he? Then after that, there's this weird sponsor bit that I'm ashamed to say I actually kind of find funny. Unfortunately, it's not time for a regularly scheduled programming yet, because there's more mazes! Great! But wait! There's more! Buy now and you'll get 2 mazes for the price of 1. One on top of the other, and with 0 visual indicators as to where it even is or how it even works. Dissatisfaction guaranteed! I had to boot up Advanced Map for this one, and it was still a pain in the ass because this is what I have to work with. I'm glad I dicked around with ROM hacking tools enough as a kid to understand what this even means. Next room! The MC decides to drown himself. Alright! Water. Duh! So this bit of the SS Congrejo is completely different from the other 2 times for some reason. I'm pretty sure it's the SS Congrejo still, and this is basically its own dungeon within a dungeon. So after wandering around for a bit, the MC sees a band playing in this submarine, and they're playing the same song the guy on Mount Pyre was singing, and the MC really wants to see them down there. So you have to get a key in order to see them, and you have to check all of these trash cans to do that, but if you're really unlucky, like I was in my first playthrough, you might not get a key from any of the trash cans and assume you did something wrong, but no, it's just coded weird. And then you do that, and everything about this is very surreal. And I've run out of things to say, so just boggle vacantly again. And now you're able to go here, and oh Christ, what's it doing now? The answer to that question is it is now doing a quiz where all of the questions and answers are either nonsense or references. What is happening? The 4 categories are gamer questions, which references video games, music questions, which references music, as well as Pokemon Solar, which again, was never released to the public, Hoenn questions, which asks historical facts about Hoenn that were made up for this game, and general trivia questions, which means whatever it goddamn wants to mean. One wrong answer out of the 30-something questions you're asked, and it is all the way back to the start. And that includes interacting with this teleporting crate at the end, which is actually a really good payoff for this. Good thing you made a save state, because there's no way in hell you did this without one. Gonna be honest, the entire quiz segment is easily my favorite of Snakewood's painful shenanigans. The 3rd Congrejo visit in general is also my favorite of the Congrejo visits, just because it cranks up the surreality to 11 in a way that's, well, I don't know if it's funny, but it is certainly Snakewood. Again, bit hard to appreciate in the moment since it was after 3 really annoying mazes, and it's hard to appreciate afterwards because of, well, everything that happens next. Next room! Okay, we're back in the Necropolis. This is the final bit of the game, and it's just a bunch of battles from here on out. No bullshit, intentional or otherwise, except for the permanent soft lock that's apparently here somewhere, but I can't get that to trigger for the life of me. All I know is that there's apparently a soft lock somewhere around here. I could not verify this, though. But after all of those battles, we finally reach Osaka Arkreutz. Again. For realsies this time. So Osaka Arkreutz and the MC have a painfully generic hero-villain conversation, and he taunts us by showing us that the other 3 guys have now been frozen in carbonite before battling us, and, you might expect for this battle to be an over-leveled pain in the ass, because this is Snakewood. Not exactly. He is over-leveled, but Xenix only has 4 Pokemon. This is the final boss. No, it's not a fake-out final boss. Glyce isn't gonna go backstab him, even though he totally would. This is the final battle of the game, and he has less Pokemon than Haruko, who was the gym leader in Dewford. The only upgrade from his previous appearance, aside from the levels, is that he has a face leech now. But did I mention how this thing instantly dies so long as you're able to tank 1 hit from it? Seriously, these are its stats. So, you beat him. But after that, this game does something pretty unique. He decides to take you on in a really long set of cutscenes instead of in gameplay. I said it was unique, I didn't say it was a good idea, okay? Xenix attempts to erase you from existence, and... okay, if you're still watching at this point because you haven't been alienated by the sheer amount of Homestuck in this video yet, don't worry, I'm here to alienate you too, Homestuck fans. because this is what you sound like in every conversation. And I know that because that's what I sound like in every conversation. Unfortunately, he's not able to give the MC the Asimov treatment because Asimov is just back now. And the reason we get is that he's the unutterably obnoxious accordion thief. Now this might sound like unfunny word salad, but there's actually a deeper meaning here. Let's take apart these 4 words. You might think that the logical way to break down this phrase would be like this, but the Deadly Seven do not abide by logic. It should be divided into unutterably obnoxious accordion and thief. What does unutterably obnoxious accordion mean? Nothing, but that is also the key to how this works. He is saying he is the thief of nothingness, or in other words, he stole his non-existence in order to come back into existence. Did someone leave the toaster running or something? The hell is that smell? Asimov then proceeds to Asimov all over the place, and so far, it's looking like the ending's not going to be the most obnoxious shit ever. Unfortunately, if you'll recall, there are still things that I said will come up later that haven't come up yet, and one of them is about to come up. Asuka R. Kreutz un-Asimoved himself, and counterattacks by revealing that he also has the power of nothingness, as he then bakes a non-existent cake in a non-existent oven, summoning a non-existent elevator, causing the entire Hoenn region to not exist. All hope seems lost, since the 3 surviving characters are the antagonist so bland I forgot to put him on the likability chart, a member of the Deadly Seven, and the MC, but the MC managed to find a way to weaponize their unlikability, because they have the power of reference jutsu, which it turns out is what they accidentally did to Isao. And then you reference Gurren Lagann and the Jabberwocky and Asuka R. Kreutz until he dies, and then that fixes everything. That was not an exaggeration. That was the climax of the game! I promise that all of that was not nearly as cathartic as my use of final boss music made it seem like. Especially since this game has no final boss music, it's just the default traitor theme. Random Inquisition grunts, they get to have the Archie and Maxie boss battle theme, but the final boss doesn't get to have anything. So you're back at the Resistance HQ, they decide to throw a party for you at Jim Island. They don't tell you how to get there, this is how you're supposed to get there, and once you get there, the party's already over. If you didn't know better, you'd assume this is where the ending ended, but the real ending is in the fucking Lily Cove Museum for some reason. I don't know if it ever tells you to get there, but just watch.
Who are you that trespasses here?
Who are you?
I am Barkesh! I am a living god!
You're the man the guys at the monastery worship. The one who doesn't look like a man.
I look like a man, puny mortal! Now prepare to die!
Wait! Hey, get out of here, Barkesh.
Oh no! My arch enemy, Professor Slokobutin! I must flee!
MC, we don't have much time. What? We have to leave. What? May and I are getting ready to ascend to a higher plane of existence, John A. Thone's Livingstone Seagull style. Come close, and we'll tell you the secrets of your past. Damn it. What the hell was all that about? Yo! What the hell is going on here? We have the egg again now? No, we don't. What do you want?
I have the resolution for the ongoing quest for your past, straight from the Cutlerine himself.
What? Tell me. The truth is, your past doesn't matter. This memory loss is a chance for a new start. Whatever your old life was, whatever you had before, whatever you were in that past life, it's gone and it's never coming back. So just forget about the past, lose your purpose, and get on with your life. What? I mean, what? What kind of ridiculous moral to the story is that? Come to think of it, what sort of ending is that? Okay, I have to sort this out with the Cutlerine. Sometime later. I see. That was a very enlightening talk. I'd never seen my world in that way before. This is all just being made up as it goes along, isn't it? There was no plan, no overarching plot. This is what real life is. Confusing, stupid, maddening, and when it comes down to it, without any discernible meaning. My god, I've discovered the truth about life. I guess that all that remains for me to do is say, it's the end, goodbye face in the sky, it's been a blast, but I don't need you anymore, I'm going to ascend. What the fuck? That's me! Then it just turns into Cutlerine putting words in my mouth about how I love this game, but it's also very clear that it's tongue-in-cheek, and that's the ending. In the middle of a museum. So I was originally going to harshly dig into this ending, as you could probably tell by my sarcastic cadence as the dragon egg, but the more I think about it, the more this, in a roundabout accidental sort of way, is kind of the perfect ending to Pokemon Snakewood. Yes, it does throw away the other big plot thread, but at this point I don't really care. Cutlery never had anything in mind for this outside of what they had originally, and trying to backwards a solution out of the clues he wrote, well, that's how you end up with a lot of the other parts of the first half of Snakewood. This ending is ridiculous, don't get me wrong. It's so much of a Gynax ending, it practically counts as an anime reference in and of itself, as well as the whole taking place in a museum for no reason thing, and the fact that, again, as far as I know, it never directs you there. But all of that is part of why, at least I think, it kinda works. How else to end the weirdest fan game ever made than in the weirdest way possible? Especially in Snakewood's trademark, shallow weirdness combining into deeper weirdness style. Plus, I unironically like the philosophy bit, even if it was probably meant to be ironic pseudo-philosophy that ended up accidentally being good philosophy. But I think the best part of this ending isn't even the ending. It's the fact that the cutscene trigger for this is always active, and you can see the ending as soon as you get to Lily Cove, and be even more confused, because what the hell is happening? You might not even realize it was supposed to be an ending, and not just some trippy cutscene you activate when walking into the wrong building. So, yeah, that's the game. There's still a lot of side content we haven't covered. We are not covering the side content. There is so much side content. I don't even know all of the side content because I haven't even played all of the side content, and I am done thinking about this game because this video has taken 4 months. But from what I've played, it's pretty solid, I think. I don't know. Don't expect me to make anything this long ever again. This was just supposed to be a side project to a Pokemon fan game of my own that I'm working on, and instead I made a 2-hour-long video essay, I want to call it, but I think the better word is just talking session, because video essay implies a certain level of formality that was just not here. This line isn't even written down anywhere. I'm adding this in the last fucking 3 days of production. Everything about this is pure chaos. I did a that about Pokemon Snakewood, instead of doing the thing I actually want to do. Oops. Conclusion. Pokemon Snakewood is a beautiful disaster. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This game is bad. It's bad at being funny, it's bad at being dramatic, it's bad at being fun, it's bad at being frustrating somehow, it's bad at being edgy, it's bad at keeping things consistent at all, what you need for a plot to be a plot, especially one this convoluted, it's bad at keeping a coherent world, what you also really need for a plot, it's also bad at convincingly being the same world as Pokemon Ruby, it's bad at being a plot-focused RPG since you need a plot for that, and it tries to be so many things that just do not mesh, that cannot mesh. You can't simultaneously be edgy and grimdark and a farcical screwball comedy at the same time, if you did know how to make those things. It is bad in nearly every conceivable way. So why the fuck am I hopelessly obsessed with it? Well, first off, the obvious. There are some ideas that could have been good. A Pokemon game that's a complete farcical comedy the whole way through could have worked. A Pokemon story that forgoes the gyms in favor of having progress based on fighting the evil team or whatever could have worked. I like that one scene with Glyce, and also Glyce. And also Alicia when she was a thing before the retcon. But Snakewood having some good ideas isn't the main reason I'm obsessed with it. Snakewood may be comprised almost entirely out of flaws, but something about it is just impossible to get out of your brain. That weird thing at the end where it forces words into my mouth about how I love the game because it's stupid. The thing is, it's 100% right, even if it is tacky as hell for the game to be saying it, even when in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. This game might be zero fun in the moment, but once you take a step back and unpack it all, it's just so fucking bizarre. It's like waking up from a particularly goofy nightmare, and you realize that you were freaked out about barreling down the road in a telephone box made out of straw. That's a real dream I had once. As I've said several times now, this was my second playthrough, and what's weird is that I went into it fondly remembering all of the game's dumb quirks, but As the game went on, it quickly turned into hatred as I was enduring all of this all over again. But after I beat it, it turned back into fondness. This game has so much weird shit in it that just sticks in you forever. Like, there's a reason the Deadly Seven tend to come first when you think of this game. They're sort of perfectly emblematic of this game's Snakewoodiness. There's not really a better word for it. So bad it's good implies a certain level of in-the-moment enjoyment, which it just does not happen. Snakewood may be unfunny, unplayable, and incomprehensible, but it is anything but soulless. You can kind of tell that it was mostly made just for the fun of making something, and that is deserving of a whole lot of respect. Pokemon Snakewood has been a huge inspiration for me. Even if in the same sense that Freud inspired the field of psychology, my own Pokemon fan game, Pokemon Descent, was largely inspired by Snakewood, just with a more sci-fi twist and less shenanigans. Hell, that's not just down to the premise being, what if Pokemon was with zombies, except not actually because assholes were the real monsters all along. I realized while I was making this, that the first dungeon has a lot of elements that are extremely similar to the SS Congrejo, just hopefully more intuitive. That first dungeon is also a department store, but I promise that's for reasons that actually make sense in context. It would be easier to list the things in Pokemon Descent that weren't inspired by Pokemon Snakewood, or weird dreams that I've had, since in case you haven't noticed, I'm a big fan of those. I'm gonna be honest, it feels wrong reviewing this game. It's bad, but it's bad in such an earnest way. It's like getting mad about Sparkle Dogs or Mary Sue's, and it feels a little like punching down an easy target just to point and laugh and say, isn't this terrible? I used to have a lot of misplaced, immature anger towards Cutlerine for making this game for some reason, and a lot of others do, and I don't like that. And I think that comes down to this game being both extremely personal, due to it being basically a cross-section of Cutlerine's brain at the time, as well as Cutlerine even inserting himself on occasion, while also being very, very unpleasant to play. But now, I feel so fucking bad for Cutlerine. This is not a game that should have been popular. This is not a game that should have been well-known enough for me to feel comfortable making a negative review of it. That is something I've come to realize over the course of making this. This game is still god-awful, don't get me wrong, but I cannot understate how, in spite of all I've been saying about it, it is still a beautiful disaster. It is easy to explain why something is bad. It's hard to explain why something is bad in a good way. And it is impossible to explain how Snakewood makes me feel. I've been struggling to figure out what the point I even want to make with this video is. Part of me thought it needed to have some kind of genius 200 IQ broader narrative message the whole way through in order to justify its length. Otherwise, according to my subconscious, it would have just been an overly bloated, poorly formatted, slightly contradictory mess that could have been half as long. But then I realized, that's kind of what Snakewood is, isn't it? But people still liked that, and even though it sucks, I still enjoyed it. Albeit in a roundabout sort of way. Maybe you don't need to make a masterpiece every day. Just something people can enjoy. Cutlerine was also critical of his own work, even at the time. Even when making as many bizarre decisions as he did. If he had spent the time meticulously going back and fixing everything, we probably wouldn't have gotten Snakewood. Everyone's their own worst critic. Not just worst in the sense that we're all aggressively nitpicky of slight mistakes we make, but worst in the sense that our judgments can't always be trusted. And sometimes, you just gotta send it and ship a 90% done product just so you can get it out the door before Deltarune releases, because of a self-imposed bit inspired by this community post. God damn it, I just gave a point to the video, didn't I? Cut that from the script, that entire paragraph. You heard nothing! You heard nothing!